welcome to the Andrew Ferris podcast, an episode of the show that I am so excited about. I've been pumping it up for a while, but today on the show, I've got my second ever Opening the Books episode, and this time it is with Beardbrand. Beardbrand is a brand that you may have known and seen. They've been around the e-commerce space for a while, led by founder Bandholz. Eric is an incredibly transparent guy with his business in general, and he's got his own podcast, E-commerce Conversations, that you should listen to. Eric and I got talking recently about his business because Beardbrand was built on the back of organic content in a way that almost no other e-commerce brand that I'm aware of had really ever done. They were path-breaking in this respect. They built a huge YouTube following and really made their business pretty large on the back of organic YouTube content without spending any money on ads. In fact, Eric would tell you meta ads has always been a weak spot for them. As long as they've been in e-commerce, they hadn't been able to make meta ads work for them. So we got on a call and I basically started to coach them through their approach to meta ads. Now, that is the basis for an Opening the Books episode, a live recorded coaching call. That's what this concept is, where some founder very graciously, transparently shares what's happening in their actual business, their actual ad account. So instead of just hearing me give general principles, we get specific about what I would do if I was running their ad account. And that's what this episode is. It's with me, Eric, and Mike Lawson, the head of Eric's Meta Ads program at this point. If you're not familiar with this concept and on the Andrew Ferris podcast, this is my second one of these ever. The link is in the show notes for my first one with Nazrin Jafari from Mixed by Nazrin, where Nazrin did the same thing. If you have heard that episode, you will like this one. If you've not heard that episode, you will like it. And the same idea is there: a real live recorded coaching call with actual transparency to what's going on in the business. In this case, with Beardbrand. One other thing about this episode that is really cool. About a month after we recorded the beginning of it with all three of us, with me, Eric, and Mike on the call, Mike and I followed up and did basically another hour where we walked through, okay, some good things have happened. What would we do next to get there? And so in the middle of this episode, you'll see it's going to go over to a month later, and you'll know when. We'll tell you when, of course, that update happens in the episode. But that's coming too. So we actually get some follow-up on some of the changes they've made and some of the growth that happened after they started to implement some of this stuff, which is awesome. And there's more room from there to keep growing. So look out for that. One last thing. In this episode, there are a whole bunch of documents referenced and episodes referenced and all kinds of stuff like that. And so there are a million links. Just like with my Mixed by Nazrin episode of Opening the Books, with this one, the way to get access to all of those things completely for free is to go to my website and sign up for my email list, and you'll get them all. And the way to do that is to go to ajfgrowth.com/beardbrand, ajfgrowth.com/beardbrand. That has all of the links that I reference on this episode, and they will get emailed to you in an easy format, so you can just get all of it totally free, and I'm not going to spam your email address afterwards. So make sure to sign up for that. All right, that's enough of the intro. It's me, it's Eric Bandholz, it's Mike Lawson working on Beardbrand, giving you visuals into all of it as we go. Let's dive in. All right, gentlemen, how you guys doing?
Good. I'm excited.
Good.
Woo!
I'm glad you feel that way,
man.
I'm glad you feel that way. I've actually been geeked on this for a little while. I was telling Mike actually that I have a very good friend with his same name. So I've been looking forward to this conversation because it feels like a conversation with a friend. Eric, let's start with you. Tell people who you are. I think probably a lot of people know you, but tell people who you are and the beginning stages of Beardbrand and how long you've been around and all that kind of stuff. Give people context on your business is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know how to do this.
I'll try to keep it pretty brief. I'm Eric Bandholz, founder of Beardbrand. Beardbrand's been around. We're going on our 12th year now. We're entirely bootstrap company, self-funded. I've got a couple of business partners. And when we tend to make money, we try to put it back in the business and build more of a, I hate using the term lifestyle business, but a business that I enjoy the journey on is the goal of Beardbrand. Beardbrand's a men's grooming company. We sell products obviously for your beard, but we've gone beyond the beard. So if you're a dude, I've got products for you, stuff for your hair, for your body, of course for your beard, under your armpits. Yeah, it's been a fun ride. It's a fun ride. We kind of like to do things our own way. So from a marketing perspective, we've historically leaned on our organic channels. We have a YouTube channel with a couple million subscribers, a smaller channel with 200,000 subscribers, and then of course we're on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, Facebook, and all those kind of have like a few 100,000 followers as well. Our newsletter is best in class, incredible writing, incredible education, inspiration, and shows how to do email without simply resulting to sales promotions and discounts. So Mike's done a wonderful job creating a brand voice and creating interesting content on both our blog and our newsletter over the years. So it's been a fun ride, and I tend to share the stuff over on e-commerce conversations, which is my podcast, and Andrew's been on there. It's been a great episode as well. So hopefully that wasn't too long. That's a little bit longer than I normally do.
No, this the genesis of this conversation is that we got deep on meta ads last time I was on your podcast, and I was like, hey, why don't we just come on and talk about your specific account and talk about what we would do in that. So I think we'll spend a lot of the time there, and I think that's probably the place where I could be the most helpful anyway. I mean, you guys, Eric, are the first brand that I can think of in D2C that really was serious about like organic customer acquisition through really cool content. And so when I think of like great blog, great newsletter, great organic content, like you guys are the first brand that comes to mind for me. I remember hearing about when you got to 1 million subs on YouTube and just being like, my goodness, that's like just monstrous. So Mike, I know you've been a big part of that. Can you, Mike, tell people your title and how long you've been at Beardbrand for?
Senior copywriter, and it'll be 4 years in October.
Cool. So you've been a huge part of that journey, and now you're running the meta ads account too. Yeah.
Yes, I'm like Kirby. I just keep swallowing more and more things.
That's really funny. I was trying to think about if everybody would know a Kirby reference, but then I thought like probably everybody listening to this is like a millennial. So yeah, probably. Probably so, yeah. A few of the younger ones who probably won't get it, but yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so let's start with some sort of big picture context for kind of some of the problems that we want to work through and try and solve today. So state of the business a little bit, like what's going on lately, where have you been? And on the meta ad side, like I know, you guys are unique in that meta ads has not been the core driver of customer acquisition for this business, unlike so many D2C brands. And so do you want to talk about kind of where things are at now and what your hopes are for sort of meta as a channel and what you're trying to get out of it?
Yeah, I feel like, historically Beardbrand's always done the things that are traditionally viewed as difficult well. Like we've been pretty good about organic content and, driving awareness through that, building relationships with remarkable people and influencers and stuff like that. We've never really done the easy things well, which is meta ads. We've kind of dipped our toe in it and had some success, but always kind of had the challenge of making sure that it was profitable. As a bootstrap company, like the cash actually, positively moving into the business is quite crucial. Like it's not sustainable for us to acquire a customer and expect for them to, pay off in 12 months or 18 months or something like that. So I like to see, ideally a first time profitable customer acquisition. At worst, maybe 3 months to break even on it. But so those things have historically been hard. If you've listened to my podcast, like this has been a really tough year for us. We're down 40% year over year. Our strategy last year was to double down on organic content, and that didn't go well for us. Like our views on YouTube have been struggling as well. We lost a major retailer in Target. And so like it's just been like a series of, I want to call them calamities, but it feels like calamities when you're running the business. In 2023, I almost feel like the reality on the wall is that you have to grow through paid, like it or not, for us in this space at this point. So that's kind of moved to the top in terms of our customer acquisition strategy has been through paid ads, specifically meta. Like, so what I want to do is really master meta and take that as far as we go. So we're not doing Google ads at all right now, or TikTok or Snapchat or anything like that. I really want to stay focused and master one channel. And then once we get that mastered, then look at ways that we can bring on other channels. But I don't want to muddy the water with, like multiple attribution and different channels taking credit for different things. I just want to know what Facebook is doing or Meta is doing and then kind of grow from there.
I think that's incredibly wise. And there's a lot of people who like, they kind of start, that probably speaks to your experience in e-commerce. Like there's a lot of people who start freaking out when things go wrong and they like just start chasing a million solutions in a million directions. But instead, I think what you're doing is like saying, okay, we probably have to get good in this channel. It's just part of the reality of things. You said whether you like it or not, by the way, but it sounds like you don't like it.
No, if it was up to me, we wouldn't do paid ads.
Yeah.
But
Why is that? What's your instinct against that for? There's not a right answer.
I don't
here,
I don't like Mark Zuckerberg. It's like
right.
I don't like giving him money. Is like the stupidest reason ever. But
yeah.
And especially like when you're losing on ads, then you really feel like you're giving Zuckerberg a bunch of money. So it's like if it's one thing where he's helping generate a bunch of money for Beardbrand, okay, cool, that's a good trade off. But when we're losing money and it's all going to Zuck, just don't like that.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's totally reasonable. So yeah. Okay. And so you also mentioned one other thing here that just like for context, because I think this has a big impact on the way that I would sort of suggest we approach strategy for anybody. But like, let's talk about goals as well. Do you have like you said, you hate the term lifestyle business, but you want a business that in some ways fits your lifestyle. That's my sense of what you're saying. Like, can you talk a little bit more about like what your hopes are and goals are for Beardbrand? I think I've heard you say in the past that you don't necessarily set like a revenue target each year or something. So, and I don't know if that's still true, but can you talk about sort of how you're thinking about where you want the business to get to and what you're hoping for with it?
Yeah, we don't do revenue targets. We try to like kind of our culture, and I don't know if I communicate it well to Mike, so he might be able to correct me or not. But the culture is like try to do the best that we can do and work within, our own talents and abilities, and not kind of put external stresses on ourselves. So intrinsically motivated to do the best that we can. And then my job as a leader is to help make sure that the team is pointed in the right direction and working on the right things, which, sometimes I get wrong or I distract the team. But
can confirm on the distraction part, not.
But in terms of, and fortunately, like Mike's been here long enough that he has the confidence to, be like, hey, let's focus on this. We're not there yet, stuff like that. Newer hires tend to have to really struggle with that when they hear a lot of idea dump coming from me and want to be like Kirby and do it all, but the reality is like all my ideas can't be executed. So I do I'm biased. I love my team. I think I got the greatest team. They're a joy to work with. I want to build a business that I enjoy doing. If I sold Beardbrand, I don't know what I'd do. I'd try to create another Beardbrand. So it's like, I'm just going to create the same thing I already have. Why would I sell it? So for me, like I want to build like a legacy brand, a brand that can be around for decades. And I think to be around for decades, you kind of have to have like a longer term approach, and you have to be, I think a term people use is like anti-fragile or, not over leveraged basically. So, for me, that's very conservative. Cash management, and being able to scale up or down depending on the needs of the business. And maybe we don't grow too fast because of the risk that would be included with that. And maybe sometimes we have to make some pretty challenging cuts as well when the business is not doing that well. But fortunately, I feel like, the worst is behind us. So what I'd like to see the business do in the short term is probably grow another, ideally maybe like 10 to 20%, claw back some of that market share that we lost. And then it will take a little bit of ease out of the business where we don't have to do things like sell the office and, like really make unpleasant cuts. Like that.
That's super, super helpful in terms of setting that context. I think like one of the questions like I'm always trying to ask is what is not only sort of, people ask me all the time things like, should you, or what's a good ROAS target? What's a good CAC target? What's a good CPC? What's a good, and it's like, well, the answer is dependent on so many things. But what I hear so far, just from talking to you about this, is like, okay, on a cash basis, we don't want to be pushing out our profitability really, really far. And that's not only a decision based on cash management and capitalization of the business, but it's also a decision based on what you want for the business, which is like, I want to run Beardbrand for the foreseeable future. I would like it to grow, but I'm not asking for it to double. Like a, meaning like regular consistent growth via a channel that creates profitability for you in Meta. And so I look at that and say like, okay, that means that, yeah, like you said, first purchase, break even. You could maybe push it out a little bit if you really needed to, and if there was a great argument for it, and you could sort of pencil that out. But yeah, that's exactly kind of the way that I would think about it as well. In light of that, do you have a clear, and Mike, I'm actually curious if you know the answer to this question, do you have a clear ROAS target today or CAC target today that you're like managing towards?
Yeah, I mean, I think as we're just getting the account going again, and I've been shoring things up for maybe 6 weeks now. Anything above a 1 is kind of baseline where we're aiming to be just to get things moving. Yeah. 2.2 is the goal. And I think right now, over the past 6 weeks, we're kind of sitting in a 1.4, 1.5 spot. So we're up, which feels good. But there's room to optimize for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
And then, like, from an average order value, it ranges depending on, how products are doing, but it seems like around $55 is kind of what we're seeing for an AOV. So that would put it around like $25 to $30 is our target customer acquisition cost.
Okay, cool. So I won't make you fill this out exactly, but this is the way that I would think about this, typically for most brands. So let's call that 55 there. And, ultimately I would just be breaking this down usually to where I'd look at percentages, cost of goods, merchant account fees. This should be pretty standard across the board. Some amount baked in for returns, and then shipping costs and fulfillment costs. I don't know if you're self-fulfilling or if you've got a 3PL. My guess is you got a 3PL, but kind of those things all together, roll that up into some kind of number there. And then if we said, so these are not actuals, by the way, just so we're clear. These would be, this would be the beginning ways I would think about sort of how to approach target setting, is just to get us to this. And this would be sort of a first order profitability set of targets. So yeah, depending, of course, it's going to depend on the product and all kinds of other things, but let's say, Eric, if you're comfortable sharing, could we roll in some final number here for like total cost of the product?
We tend to have it like around 75%.
Okay, cool, great.
I guess it would be 25% COGS.
Right.
Where we realistically kind of end up.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we'll call it something like that, right? 25%. We'll just roll that together. And now again, you can see I've like gotten rid of the formulas here, but something like that as kind of the number. And that then creates like a really interesting way to approach this account relative to the conversation we've had so far. And this is really, really important. It's in terms of laddering into the performance of the Meta account because now you've got questions around how do we set targets and how do we build profitability, which for me is like always the first question with one of these things, to figure out kind of where spend can get to and what we want to be doing. So if we just take that as a baseline number, 75 points of margin, this is not surprising to me, by the way. Like you guys are selling consumable products, at $55, AOV is really strong in a category like that. It's being able to get up to, over $50 should help mitigate the cost of shipping anything anywhere. If you're down around $35 selling consumable products, well, then your shipping charge is going to eat up a much larger percentage of your margin. So that's awesome that your AOV's up there. I have also gone ahead already and looked through your historicals just using the Shopify cohort analysis to try to get some sense of where your LTV is at as well. And I've got you right around 60% growth in a year. And that's significant because and for people who are looking for that report right now in Shopify, in your analytics, you can just go and see there's a cohort report, and you can look at this by order, you can look at it by sales growth, etc. Now, this number is a blended average number at 60%. I bet you it's higher on some products and lower on some other ones. And if we were going to spend ongoing month over month kind of work on this, one of the things I would want to do would be to look and say, like, are there products that are particularly high margin? Are there products that are particularly high LTV? And ideally both that have any meaningful market share, and say, like, those are now your A players for like developing creative to go after, right? Because if you've got more margin and if you've got more LTV, that's the customer that you want to acquire. Sometimes there's a trade-off there. You'll have higher margin on one but lower LTV, and so you might want to have to set a target relative to each product along those lines. But that's kind of the way I would be thinking about framing these sorts of things. And so then, like, go ahead.
Do you mind if I interrupt? So this 60%, like, let's say my average order value is $55. So 60% of that is what, like $30.
Yeah. So that would mean somebody on average spends an additional $30 over the course of the year. So they spend $55 on day one, and they spend an additional. So yeah, really, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah,
okay, cool.
Which is I would say above average in e-commerce, if not spectacular. And there's all kinds of questions about how you would maybe pursue that in an ongoing way. My guess is, like, the product lasts for a while, and people are, I don't know how much people are caring for their beard daily versus elsewhere. And again, depending on which product, you've got a bunch of men's grooming stuff. So I bet this ranges quite a bit. And like I said, if you were going to go into sort of looking at all the details here, you could go into that cohort report in Shopify in the analytics tab, and you could actually you can actually really easily go look by first product and sort this out a whole bunch of different ways. So yeah, the other thing I'll say we should just like flag and watch out for is it's possible, because of your organic content, that you have customers who actually perform better on an LTV basis based on which marketing channel they've come in through. It's possible that, like, a paid acquisition customer has like a not as deep of an experience with the brand, and versus somebody who's been following you on YouTube for 2 years, and so maybe there's less loyalty there. I ultimately, these are all marketing efforts in a way where my guess is it's not too wild. But again, you could sort of go sort through those details. For the sake of time, we won't go dive into all of those things. But, like, Mike, this is one thing I would be doing if I was in your shoes right now, right, where you've taken over the ad account. I'd just be going and playing with that cohort builder in Shopify. All right, so here we go. So here's your customer cohort analysis. Again, you just kind of go to this in the analytics tab right here in Shopify. You'll see it. This might be plus only, but I'm not totally sure. Really useful.
It's funny, we use Lifetimely as well, and this is like very similar.
Yeah, well, so this report is coming for Lifetimely. I use Lifetimely mostly as well, and Lifetimely has some easier ways of getting at that revenue percentage increase, where I had to do a little bit of manual stuff without looking at Lifetimely. Lifetimely is also really cheap and is a nice tool. But yeah, there's a bunch of this information that's coming in here. But, you could look at just sort of like gross sales over that time and see, how that's growing. And you could look at it, of course, on all kinds of different timelines, etc. But if we were to go and do this, right, you can go play with a bunch of different filters for this. You could look at sales channel, marketing channel, product name, include subscription or not. That's a really useful thing, because you can see subscriber growth versus non-subscriber growth and revenue, like all of those different things. And I would just kind of goof around with this for an hour and just like go see if you can find any products or anything else that are getting meaningful value where you can really see if that's the case. And for me, that would be driving what I would be thinking about, sort of where to invest my creative time and effort, right? To go and do that. So that's baseline. Anything else we want to hit there? I think you guys are probably fairly clear on that point, but yeah. Quick interruption to tell you about my friends at More Staffing. If you have considered trying to add to your team in any part of your e-commerce business, I'm talking about supply chain, inventory management, logistics, marketing, growth, like customer service, you should be considering that in the Philippines. My friends at More Staffing are incredible. They're a Filipino staffing agency that will help you recruit, onboard, train, and they'll provide ongoing coaching to employees in the Philippines to join your e-commerce business. And here's the thing you need to understand about this. The goal here isn't just cheap. The goal is to find incredible e-commerce talent with deep resumes, deep experience, to add them to your business, and then to do that, yes, at a lower cost than you would hire those same people in the US. But it's not just about cheap. Like, you're gonna find actual professionals with serious experience who are high integrity people ready to come and help your business, who will do a great job, and you will pay them more than they will get in a lot of other business opportunities in the Philippines, which means you'll attract great talent, and it will be a win-win, and more staffing is your pathway to doing that. I personally work with them in my business. I have now hired 4 people for more staffing in my business, and I love them. They are great. They have made a meaningful impact on the business. I love working with them. It's been awesome. There's been no issue with English speaking or time zones or any of those kinds of things that you might worry about with an overseas employee. They've just been really great. So go to morenow.co and start the conversation. Just start the conversation. If there's somewhere in your business you're thinking about adding talent, give it a look in the Philippines with my friends at More Staffing. They are fantastic. You will love them. And they even give you a 1-year guarantee. If they hire an employee for you, if they help you hire an employee and they don't last for a year, they will help you replace that employee completely for free. So go check out More Staffing at morenow.co. All right, let's get back to the show. Mike, let me just pause here and ask you a little bit about kind of when you took over, what your approach is here, anything you feel like this is the stuff that you feel really clear that you're trying to accomplish, and sort of how you want to run this. So give me a little bit of background on sort of when you took over and what you're trying to accomplish there.
Yeah, so I guess I took over late July, and really started getting things going on the account in August, probably beginning of August. What I'm working through is this 4-phase process where phase 1 is basically taking ad creative and putting it into a campaign optimized for click rate. And it's an ABO campaign. And I might run like 10 versions of one ad where just one thing is different on each ad. And I'm basically just testing for differences in the creative and seeing which generates a better response. At that point, what I'm looking for is anything that has over a 2.5% unique click-through rate through or with a minimum of 400 impressions. And most of these I kill at 400 impressions. That usually gives me enough data to say, this ad's drawing something, this one's not.
So that's this campaign here, yeah?
That's this phase 1. Cool. Phase 2 is taking anything that's a winner in phase 1. So anything that meets that unique click-through rate criteria, I set up in staging as so it's in a campaign optimized for conversions. And then I move that into phase 2. And I test it on a broad audience, US males ages 25 and up. And I give it a budget of $25 and I let Facebook do its thing. And what I'm looking for is 10 conversions at my target CAC, which is $20 to $25. And honestly, if it's $30, I'll let it go. If it's $35, I'll typically let it go too, based on what those those actual average first purchased order value is. So that's where I'm at. Anything that I've had that's worked in phase 2, I've just gradually increased that ad set budget within phase 2 and just kind of scaled that way to that broad audience. And then I've set up in phase 3 is testing out different audiences. So that's where I'll take any ads that are winning, and I want to have 3 to 4 at a time minimum. And I'll just set those up with different ad sets targeting different audiences. And I'm basically just looking, can I improve performance with these ads based on putting them in a different pool of people? And then ultimately, anything that works in phase 2, I would move into phase 4, which would just be scaling. And so I would take the best performing ads at the best audiences and just get them started right off the bat in an ABO campaign at a higher budget, trying to get them out of learning as quickly as possible. Yeah. And I have some ads that I would turn on in phase 4 right now, but I'm waiting on a stock resupply. Okay. We kind of created a bit of a issue with out of stock stuff with some of this ad success early on.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. You've got some stuff that's clearly working. That phase 3 campaign in particular looks pretty strong. Okay, I hear that, and what I hear in that is sort of a really meticulous approach to creative testing. This feels like the approach of a copywriter to me, who's like thinking really carefully about messaging and wanting to understand what's working and what's not. I'll say actually one of the other things that sort of spurred this conversation when I was talking to Eric on his podcast recently, which we'll link in the show notes, by the way. Let me just jot that down so that gets in there.
I did listen to that episode, by the way.
Oh, great. Okay,
So,
well,
yeah.
yeah. So you probably heard that I'm about to tell you I think a pretty different approach on the whole. But one thing I told Eric is that I think a copywriter is the right person in general to be running an ad account. I want somebody who is really, really focused on messaging, and like, especially for a brand like Beardbrand, where like, the brand itself is so important to what you guys are trying to accomplish. And Eric, I know not only is like sort of business strategy for you, but my sense is it's just like a business that you feel proud of running, is like a brand that you want, which is a really important part of the business. So to me, like having somebody who's got real feel for and control the messaging's been in it for a little while as the primary person driving the creative approach to the account and ultimately the performance of the account is right, because you can then go work with designers and editors to get the sort of visual outcomes that you want, and brief things and edit things and request re-edits and all those kinds of things as needed. But it really, I strongly believe that the performance of meta ads begins on a creative level, really, really is rooted in messaging first and foremost, and finding a way to kind of get messaging that comes across and performs really, really well. So what I hear in your method is an approach to really trying to learn, and go from there. I think that you are probably shooting yourself in the foot by doing it that way, though, and I'll tell you why. I think that you can actually learn a lot more, a lot faster, while reducing the cost of testing by massively consolidating your campaign approach. And so it'll actually, what I would recommend moving to is essentially an approach that is going to be targeting really, really broadly, pretty much across the board, excluding past customers, because I want to keep those in a separate target bucket. And then get you the opportunity to actually spend as much of your time as possible briefing and iterating on creative, launching that creative into the account, and then scaling what's working as quickly as possible without having to move things around and take all those learnings. And then essentially just take the learnings as they come, as you see what stuff starts really, really working. So that is what I think that you're sort of making it harder on yourself actually than you need to get the learnings that you want by having this like move through different phases approach, and instead would suggest, what if we actually could launch the creative, and if it works, it scales, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't, and then that's it. Then you just kind of go from there. That's the way that I would approach it. So now we're going to get to the point in the conversation where I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. It's going to be different than what you're doing so far, and you guys get to decide if you want to do it or not. It's not my account. I'm going to hang up when this call is over, and you guys will get to think if I'm right or if I'm wrong. But there we go. So let's jump back over really fast to the unit economics sheet, because I want to actually kind of walk through some of that setup, to think about how we approach the structure of these ads. Actually, before I do that, let me share screen again in the ad account. Have you guys created or optimized or set up your Facebook and Instagram shops at all?
I don't know.
Okay, so
I think we set it up maybe years ago, but I don't know if it's something we're currently doing or using.
So I'll just pause here and say you should. I am astounded. I'm astounded by how well Facebook and Instagram shops has worked for at least one of my clients, where basically by clicking a button, once the shop is set up, as long as all your orders are processing the right way and everything is fulfilling the right way, there is some subset of Facebook and Instagram users who clearly like shopping on Facebook and Instagram directly. I don't get it at all. I can't imagine doing that myself. But by running ads to website and shop, I have seen at least one client like grow their acquisition basically with no effort by like 25% at the same return. And so
What kind of customers do they have? Are they primarily women or men or
primarily women? Yeah, for sure. Primarily women. But there's actually another thing here, which is that if we build our account around bid caps or cost caps, then there's really no risk to doing it as long as the experience works. Because what will happen, right, is like Facebook and Instagram will start sending some traffic there. If it doesn't work, they will stop doing that. If you can't get it at your target CAC, then you won't do that. And that basic point, that I just said, that by running caps, you sort of allow yourself to test things like creative, things like your Facebook shop. I think is like one of the key reasons to run bid caps or cost caps is that it will just say like, look, this is the return we need. If you can get that return, spend my money. If you cannot get that return, do not spend my money. And that eliminates so much risk in the equation of testing anything like this. So, okay, now I will help your OCD and X that out because it was actually bothering me as well. But I have now put my finger on that and said, I'll just say I have seen meaningful performance improvement from brands. And it shocked me. I would not have believed it. Meaningful performance improvement by adding that. And by the way, if you ever want to add it, once it's set up, the way you would do that would just be to create a new ad set and you just click right here, website and shop. You have to go make sure in the setup phase that everything works, but it's that simple.
I will say probably the biggest reason why I haven't gotten into that yet is I've been kind of like just taking this very meticulous approach to getting the ball moving and kind of working with one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And gathering as much data as I can on that one thing. And
totally.
Because I'm kind of also just learning this on the fly as I go. So
yeah, totally. And I mean, I completely understand that. I think as long as the shop experience is decent, I think it can be effective. And so yeah. All right, so let's talk through this sort of account setup a little bit more. And I actually want to start on the question of attribution setting. So right now, you're at what Meta defaults you into, which is 7-day click or 1-day view attribution. Mike, talk about that a little bit. And if this gets vulnerable, sorry, I don't know. I know you've been running this account for 6 weeks, so you're brave to come on and talk through these things. But there are is there a particular reason you've chosen this attribution setting?
That's the attribution setting that was in there, standard.
Yeah,
and
totally. Great.
That's just what I rolled with.
Yep, makes sense. I think that's why a lot of people do it. My first and strong piece of advice, this is one that it's kind of a no-brainer to me, is that unless you know for a fact that Beardbrand customers have a long consideration cycle, and at a $55 AOV, I highly doubt they do. I would rebuild in the future with all attribution settings at 1-day click and get rid of view attribution. Especially for, if you think about the distinction, right? Click attribution would be anybody who's clicked on the ad and then buys, in this case within a 7-day window. View attribution would be anybody who views your ad in the feed and then purchases within 1 day of that. You guys are running a meaningful organic content machine, which means lots of people are going to be coming to your website outside of your meta ads. I mean, there's not really a great reason in my view to run view attribution in general, but especially for a brand that is going to get a bunch of views on their content that has nothing to do with your ad account, including view attribution is just going to give ads needless credit for performance and is going to make your ROAS look better than it actually is, at least on a view window. So I would eliminate it. The simple way to do that would be, I think actually you probably can't do it once it's set up, but let's see. Is it at the ad set level? This is embarrassing. Oh yeah, no, here we go. Here it is. It's at the ad set level, it's attribution setting. It will default you into that, and with a live ad set, you can't change it. So you have to build a new ad set. That's okay. I think we'll do a lot of rebuilding today anyway. I would be just running that as 1-day view, as 1-day click only, and I would eliminate view attribution altogether. That will begin to get cleaner metrics around the target that we want to set. So that moves us back to this unit economics tab. Sorry, let me just pause there. Any questions, any thoughts? No? Cool. Great. So that's really important, though.
I guess.
Yeah. Go
one
ahead.
question. Can you change the default? Is that possible to go ahead and do so you don't?
I don't think so. But what I do is anytime I build a new ad set, I just duplicate an old one. So it just essentially does it for you. So, yeah. So, okay. Cause then once all my settings are set, my exclusions, all those things, it's just like duplicate, rebuild. All right. So to come back to here, let's say we're assuming 25 or 75 points of margin, 60% LTV. That means that actually, this is like one of the great things about a high margin business like this is that your first purchase break even is at a 1.34, and you're actually making money. You're adding positive contribution margin over the course of a year. So break even, right? $0 in contribution margin. This ROAS target and this CAC target are fed directly from this unit economics sheet. And by the way, anybody watching this, I have a defaulted templated version of this that you can get. Just go and follow the links in the notes and all those kinds of things, and you can use this sheet yourself as well, put in your own numbers. And the way I would do that if I was you, by the way, would be to actually put in each point: cost of goods, merchant fees, customer, all these things. So you just have clarity to where your margin is. And so your first purchase break even here would be 1.34. Your CAC targets would be $41. And now you got $0 in contribution margin, which I'm defining as revenue minus ad spend minus COGS. Okay, so revenue minus ad spend minus COGS, all the variable costs associated with selling a product to a customer. Now you're at break even on first purchase. And within a year, you've got 2460 coming in. You could sort of model out from here if you wanted to different scenarios where at certain volumes you could see exactly how much contribution margin you'd be adding to the business. If you spent $100,000 at a 1.34, so you generated $134,000 in return, that would give you 2460 times however many orders that is. So there's a way of kind of approaching modeling out how this would look over the course of the year if you want to get down to that kind of a model. I've also included here just for visual. These numbers are really arbitrary, but if you wanted sort of to go 20% below or 20% above break even, in my, that would give you a ROAS and CAC target there as well. And those are really arbitrary, like I said, but they're just sort of strategic decisions and visualizations for how you want to think about running things going forward. So yeah, again, let me pause there. Any questions about that from a target setting perspective?
I guess I would just, obviously these numbers are rough, but our cost of goods is probably more like 25%. So it'd be a couple dollars higher. I don't know how.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So we actually total, probably, yeah. Right. So all in, it would be like something like that or something like that, right? I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's at 1210 right now on B5, so that would go.
Yeah, that by the way is a template number. That's not a real number. Yeah, we can. As long as we have some kind of a rough estimate here, I can at least give you that. You guys can go back and fill this out to your specifics.
If you change the 22% to 25%, that would fix it.
Yeah, okay. But now I got to rebuild this. Here we go. There, cool. All right. So, and I don't know about your shipping costs and fulfillment costs, etc., but there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, you could sort of fill in your specifics there, but you get the idea. Same thing. It spits out these numbers for you, and you could think about this. Like, the interesting thing here is, like, even if you take a 20% loss on first purchase, you do have positive contribution margin over the course of a year, which is nice. And so that when you're in an early testing phase, you don't want to live that way forever. You're at least still going to be generating some kind of value, which is good. Okay, so now there's another detail here, which is that if we move to one-day click ROAS, one-day click attribute optimization, there is still another factor here, which is that many people will click on day one and they will buy over the course of the next 28 days for their first purchase. And those count, right? Those purchases count. It makes sense. People have some consideration cycle here. Even if it's not a huge amount, there will be some of it. And that's what I normally refer to as delayed attribution. It's not really delayed attribution. It's like delayed purchasing, right? We should probably call it delayed purchase multiplier. But I estimate that in every ad account that I look at. And that way I have some sense of if I'm going to take credit for the entire 28-day window that Meta will show me, which is how long Meta will show you of the purchase behavior off of a click, then I actually want to set my one-day click ROAS target relative to the true full 28-day window that I'm going to exist at. And so the way to check that Meta Ads in Ads Manager. It's a little tricky because of the way that Meta reports conversions, but there's like a simple way to do it. We could just like let's just take like a 3-month period that's at least 28 days or longer behind us, so that we don't have any kind of weird attribution stuff. And we can go to compare attribution settings here, and we can put in a 1-day click and 28-day click window. And so now I've got my revenue here split out between those two things. Now this is a very small spend overall, so so we should actually probably take a longer window than this. Let's go.
Yeah, it's like we didn't really start running ads until
like August.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, so it's not going to tell us much. And this is actually not going to be a full closed attribution window either. Let's see. Yeah, this is not going to tell us enough quite yet. We need more data to figure this out exactly. But what you will do as you collect more data, and you're spending a lot more recently, is you would want to take a closed attribution period, so past the last 28 days, so that ads you have run have, because Facebook reports purchases on the date of the purchase, not on the day of the click. And so trying to understand sort of how those two relate is a little bit tricky. But let's take a closed attribution window here, and right now you've generated on a 28-day click window $4,000. Let's say 41, 32, 13. And on a 1-day click window on those same ads, you're at 33, 64, 74. So let's just multiply over that. There you go. You've got a 23% increase in that period of time. I would say as a general rule, 30% is sort of like what I see in most accounts, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer. So we can estimate it there because we have so little data that looks close to about right relative to what we saw in the account there. And so I would just build that there, which means, and this is the kind of key payoff of this point, that on a ROAS basis, if you get a 1.36, assuming Meta's attribution is basically right, and I actually think it is at this point, 1.36 on a 1-day click, that will generate to you over the course of a 28-day click window, which you have visibility to, a 1.77 before any LTV comes in. And so that would then mean also at a CAC basis that we need a $40.37 CAC to generate a $31.06 CAC, which would get us again to break even on first purchase. Again, we could adjust these numbers to whatever strategy that you wanted. If what you really, really wanted was to take this 2.13 and say like, okay, we actually want to be 20% above break even over time, or you had mentioned a 2.2 target before, you can just kind of punch that in there and it will spit out for you. This just sort of does the math to spit out for you what the targets need to be. So then you can just kind of go back to there. So that's where I'm looking at. So let's say that we're going towards break even right now. What we would need if these margins are basically right is a 1.36 on 1-day click. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and just to because there is so much volatility to the average order value.
Yes.
I noticed maybe if we're promoting one product that's $20 versus another product that's $40. There's going to be a little bit of variance. Can you focus on that scalability through your ROAS instead of that CAC, or do you have either or option, or how does it work?
So one thing I would do there, and this is actually another reason to think about how you build your account, is I've actually created for you a custom AOV metric here. So it's actually coming in at lower, $44. And if we go last 30 days, let's see, 45, 42. I did notice that on the website it's a little bit higher than that too. But you can actually get this at the campaign and ad set level. And I assume that's because you're promoting different products here than what people are buying across the rest of the site or whatever. And so if that AOV is coming in at $45 or $44 on a click attribution, and by the way, if people don't know how to do this, you just create a custom metric here and you can set, in this case, AOV is, we'll leave that clicked on, is just purchase conversion value over purchases, etc. I also set up a conversion rate one. And those are available to you guys. I put them available to everybody across the business. But the AOV at $45 means that you'd have to change that CAC target relative to the AOV. And basically to your point, Eric, I would just say I would be setting this up so that probably at the campaign level or maybe at the ad set level, I would have different products going. And if I know I'm promoting a product that's going to give me a $70 AOV, then I'm going to change my CAC target relative to the specific margins of that product. And I would just go right back to this unit economics calculator and do that at the per product level, and just say like, okay, on this product, if this is my LTV and this is my unit economics, then I'm going to be more or less aggressive according to what the particular elements of that thing is. And you could do that really across any product that you wanted to. Now, some people might click on a product and actually buy something else. So you always have to validate that the AOV actually comes in relative to what you expect. But yeah, that's the way I think about it. Like everything like this, you're adjusting in real time as you go. So cool. Okay, so now you've got some kind of a CAC target, and at least gets us to break even. Again, over time, you may want to push that up to like that 2.2 number you cited earlier, Mike, and you could just kind of play the same game with this sheet that I just showed you. But now that takes us into the question of account structure and some of those things. So if we're going to move to a one-day click, and I would really recommend that. It'll give you a lot. In point of fact here, by the way, what you'll see here is if I use your default attribution, you've got 12.3 grand in 7-day click plus 1-day view. You've got 10 grand in 1-day click, 11.6 grand in 28-day click. So the attribution that you see here is actually showing more revenue than a 28-day click, despite that it's only giving you 7 days of clicks. So to the point of this attribution thing, if you actually go and set up those attribution windows here, what you'll see is that Facebook, on the default attribution setting you've got, 7-day click, 1-day view, which is what it will default you to on the revenue column here, purchase conversion value, it's showing that you generated 12.3K on these ads, right? But in fact, on a 28-day click only video, so if we extend the 7 days to 28 days and we get rid of all the view attribution, you're actually generating 11.6K. And on a 1-day click basis, it's down here. Now this number will get better over more time because this is the last 30 days, so there's a lot of delayed attribution yet to happen. That effect of somebody clicking today and buying in 2 weeks or whatever. This includes ads from yesterday, so those people have not had a chance to buy in 2 weeks yet. So this number will get better, but it's just something to keep an eye on. I don't think this is going to like wildly change the outcome necessarily, but you can see there's some difference. And on this campaign, it's a little more stark, 11.6K, which this campaign has more remarketing in it. And so if you have remarketing, there's going to be even more view attribution because people have already been to your website and they're already in the consideration cycle, etc. So yeah, that's something that I would be watching pretty closely. And just make sure that you've got your attribution settings set up so that you can see 1-day click versus 28-day click and understand the difference. So yeah. Any questions there? We're relatively clear on that.
Yeah, so if you just scroll to the right a little bit, you can see the
ROAS numbers
for each days.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Right. And that's the click, and it will give you that kind of at every level. Same thing with CAC here, CPAs right there, etc. It even does it by your custom columns. So, cool. Now I know we spent a lot of time on that, but it's really important because I think one of the biggest things with meta ads that people sort of don't realize is that like getting real clarity to your targets. Even if you recognize there's going to be some noise around attribution and if somebody clicks on product A and buys product B and all those things, having some baseline clarity there is really, really helpful because now every other decision you make can be through a framework that you feel really confident about, that you're actually making money in the account, because otherwise it's a really easy way to just like leak dollars out of your business in a way that's not very helpful. And ultimately the final measure of the value that you're creating is the actual new customer revenue you're creating. So if we really wanted to look at this, your bank account never lies to you. And this is why I'm not a Triple Whale guy or a Northbeam guy or anything like that. Like what I think you actually need to do is just go and forget what any attribution tool says. I think Meta is close enough. It's pretty close to being right at this point. They've sort of solved the iOS 14 problems. And at this point now, like what I'm going to be watching ultimately is, are my ads actually driving new customer revenue? You just added 20 grand in spend that you didn't have before. Did you see some commensurate lift in your new customer revenue over that same time period? If so, they're working. You can reasonably say that, unless you know that you had some TikTok go viral or whatever over that same time. That's the way that I would ultimately pulse check all of this stuff, is to make sure that you're actually seeing it there. So.
Yeah, in the early days, we were using Shopify's data. We set up some reports that would filter customer traffic on with the UTM codes that we threw Meta in there. And of course, the numbers weren't exactly the same, but they seemed to be like within a comfortable barrier. And then we also do post-purchase surveys with Grapevine, and we've seen just a huge influx of meta traffic as an attribution from customers. So I feel pretty confident that yeah. And it's really nice, like, because we're only doing meta, to know that, you know, it's not something else.
Yeah. I like that. I think, in my view, like, again, like Meta's, I've said this a lot of times, but I just think Meta's attribution is really close to being accurate at this point. Like, their modeling is really, really good. They say they've got very little signal loss at this point, so you can basically trust it, I think, and then just kind of adjust as you watch the effect on new customer revenue. All right. So let's talk about account structure, which is a big conversation for a lot of people. I will tell you exactly what I think is the best way to build a Meta ads account. What I would do is build my campaigns by product. And I might, at our spend level, even actually have one CBO only, literally one in the entire account, with campaign budget optimization. And let me just say from the outset what's driving my opinion here. My opinion
what is CBO?
Yeah, campaign budget optimization. So that would be that Meta allocates your spend between ad sets instead of you setting your budget at the ad set level. So you set the budget at the campaign level instead of at the ad set level. Meta then determines how to spend your dollars between all of its ad sets. That thought suggests that Meta's machine learning is very, very good at predicting the future. It's very good at predicting what will happen next, and certainly better than my human lizard brain at sort of sorting through all of this data and trying to understand what's next. You know, I've got a bunch of years in Meta ads. I've done it for a while, and like I'm just terrible at predicting what's going to happen next. I increase the budget on an ad and it performs a lot worse than I expected. I decrease it and it like performs better, and I turn off an ad. When I take over an ad account, the first thing I almost always do is I go find all the ads that past media buyers have turned off, and I drop them into a CBO, and there are ads there that are still winners that somebody turned off for some reason, and it may be because they had 2 bad days of performance. It may have been because their boss is breathing down their neck. It may have been because they broke up with their girlfriend, and they were just like feeling nervous, you know, like, and machine learning never breaks up with his girlfriend, right? So like it's like it's just going to sort of coldly evaluate the data and predict what's going to happen next based on that. And I believe that at this point Meta is insanely good at this. The machine learning is insanely good at this. So what is driving almost everything else I'm about to tell you is that basic principle, that Meta is exceptionally good at predicting the future, and you should use that to your advantage. And it does this beautiful thing, especially, Mike, for a guy like you coming from a copywriting background, which is like, it actually makes it so that you don't have to worry about it, and you can spend all your time thinking about how to write and brief better ads and launch them and go, which is probably where you are uniquely talented anyway, which is good, right? So that's kind of what's driving this. So what I would be doing is I would go, I would get rid of your phase setup. I would move all of my ads into a CBO, and I would set my ad set by product. Probably at our level of spend right now, I would have each ad set be a combination of product and probably angle. And so what I mean by that is, like, if you've got 6 ads for, like, what's one product you're advertising right now?
We're only advertising old money utility oil.
Beautiful.
So we are literally only just doing one product at a time.
Okay, that's going to make our life easy. So then I definitely want to go one CBO, and then the ad set differences would be like a sort of a set of ads that are each ad set I would separate out by angle, essentially. So if you've got like one creative style or one angle, because Meta says that learning happens at the ad set level, what you want to do is let sort of the creative do the work of doing the targeting for you. As people respond to a certain creative message, then Meta is going to accumulate the learning, people's engagement relative to the message that you've put out there. It's going to accumulate that learning at the ad set level. So if you have ads that are having wildly different sort of angles, right?
So Andrew, I've got a specific. So from an ad perspective, we have like different models, like different faces, like me, Greg, Carlos, and then we have different messages, like different quotes. So those would, let's say those are the 2 primary angles we're looking at. Would it make sense to have an ad set with the same quote but 3 different models, or would it make sense to have the same model but 3 different quotes?
Yeah, so let's look at it. Let's look at the creative here and just talk about it really specifically. pull this back up.
And sorry for interrupting you, but
No, it's good. You're taking it from the theoretical to the actual, which is probably better. So we'll take these phase 2 ads. All right. So here is the ad. This is clearly the work of a copywriter. It's so good. I love it. Yeah, man.
Which is funny because it's I'm just using quotes.
Yeah, but you know what? Copywriters pick up on that, right? Like it's like you can tell, like you notice that like this is like 8 words that do a lot of work, you know? I guess my husband just to smell it is like the language I always say is it's freighted. It's communicating a lot in a very few words, which is like effective headline writing, right? So and even shop now, smell awesome. Like it's just like tight and clear and all this. So our most popular fragrance at its best price ever is really good. I love this. So what I would say is I would keep different messages is what I would separate out at the ad set level. And then I would different models I think would be fine to combine in ad sets. The one caveat here is that like if it's like if the messaging is not wildly different, because you could sort of imagine a message that was like all about effectiveness, like a problem solution sort of oriented ad, and in a much more sort of direct way. I think like that message could be different enough here that you actually may be appealing to a slightly different customer than this sort of it's almost like vibier and smell oriented and some of that. But I think at the same time, your budget is low enough that you want to get out of the learning phase as often as possible, which means you need 50 conversions per week. So probably if the messages are reasonably close to each other and all you're doing is different models, I would probably get 6 ads into one ad set, fill up that ad set, and go from there. There is an old piece of Meta documentation that says you shouldn't run more than 6 ads in a single ad set. I don't even know if that's fully true anymore. But I have sort of run with that and kept things that way. So that's probably the way I would do it, is try to get 6 ads into one ad set. If the messages or the creative style is like wildly different, then I would be willing to sort of separate that out. But I want to have no ad sets in the learning phase. I think the learning phase matters and you want to get out of that whenever possible. And if you're not, if you get to a $200,000 a month spend or something like that, then you're not going to have this problem as much. At a $44 AOV, you're going to pile up purchases. It's one of the advantages of lower AOV products on Meta is that you pile up purchases faster. You can imagine if you had a $500 product, you just get less purchases, which makes it harder to get out of learning. Go ahead, Mike.
Andrew, could you actually pull that specific ad back up?
Sure.
Because my question is, I'm always looking to test every little thing because I can, for example, just that headline, our most popular fragrance at its best price ever, I would test 10 different versions of headlines and subheaders to go right there.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to do that and keep every other component of the ad the same, I would just put those all into one ad set within that one CBO?
So actually, if you right there, you've got you're sharing the post ID across different ads. I would not do that. I would instead actually kind of duplicate the ad as a separate ad unit each time, and it will still pull in the comments across ads. But then you'll actually have the opportunity to add 5 headlines and 5 elements of copy in the ad setup, and then Meta will combine them all for you until it finds the right mix. Now, that's going to make you a little crazy, I can tell, because you're going to actually not be able to isolate that variable. But what I will tell you is I would actually encourage you not to try to isolate those kinds of variables. What I would do if I was you is I would take bigger conceptual swings in my testing. And I wouldn't worry about the details so much at this stage of things. I would try, if I was you, to be thinking less about testing headlines and more about testing concepts. So like for me, I would be going like, what happens if I've got that ad versus a video of Eric talking about the product? And one video would be Eric talking. Another video would be like, what about Eric's wife talking about what she likes about the product on her husband? Like, what about like, you know what I mean? And I would try to come up with long form, short form, all kinds of still versus not, product image versus face, like wildly different headlines. And that's what I would be thinking about as big tests in concepts. What will happen if you do that is that a few of things will rise to the top. Something will hit, right? You'll have an ad that hits, and then at that point, I would go and start making some tweaks to see if you can affect change. But in the early stage, like you guys should be aiming at, this brand can spend $150,000 a month on meta ads. It can, and you have enough margin to do it. You have enough LTV to do it, so you're not stopped by your unit economics, and you're really content rich. And so like, and you're driving it from a creative person. So I would be thinking about like what is going to accomplish that. And a headline change is probably not the difference it's going to take you from 20,000 over the last 30 days to 150,000. What's going to do that is like meaningfully different concepts. And so that's probably the way I would be thinking about your testing process. And so because of that, this account structure that I'm advocating for will actually allow you to kind of get there fast. And that's where I would say like each of those concepts that I'm referencing becomes its own ad set. Keep it in a CBO. And by keeping it in a CBO, what will happen, of course, is that whichever ones are performing best will just rise to the top, and your lower performers will go to the bottom and they will not spend. And that will then give you the data to say, okay, this is what's working best ultimately. So put your tests in there. Go ahead and put in 5 headlines, put in 5 pieces of supporting copy when you go build the ad itself. But I wouldn't worry so much about tweaking details. I would think big concept. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. The other thing I would do if I was you is that you guys have this incredible advantage of having boatloads of organic content. I would go take some of the stuff that's performed best on Reels, on TikTok, and even on YouTube. YouTube's tricky because it's a different aspect ratio, so it's going to be horizontal instead of vertical, right? Although I don't know if you guys are big on shorts right now, right? But like that'll be vertical aspect ratio. And I would start dumping that stuff into your ad account. I would grab anything that is product focused in any way. And what I mean is like anything that's showing off the product being good. And I would just go like, I would take 2 days, download as much of that as I can, and build 20 ad sets into a CBO and just go fire that stuff in there. Because I bet you have creative that would work right now. And that would allow you to then just go and again, like the only filter I would do to sort through all that content is this stuff really strongly featuring the product? Because the one thing with direct response advertising that's going to be really different than your organic content game is really product focused stuff doesn't play as well with organic content all the time. Whereas with direct response marketing, right, it's like it's got to get people involved in the product itself. And so I'd be a little more willing to talk features and benefits and some of those kinds of things in your direct response ads as opposed to in your organic stuff, it's not going to work as well. Is my guess. I don't know. I mean, you guys know way more about organic content than I do, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like we found that like the organic content doesn't always sell. That's certainly the case. So it does have to be product oriented, organic content that hit. So that might be a little bit tougher to find. Because we tend to produce organic content that's more designed to scale.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking through some of the real stuff that you guys have and going like, there's one guy talking about how he's caring for his mustache and like, and how does he style his mustache to be that way? Well, like it starts with, him talking about blow drying and combing and all these different things that he's doing. But then he goes into, okay, and I use Beardbrands, and he references the product specifically, and then he applies the product there. You could easily get a video edit of that like the product like pops onto the screen, and so you just sort of like floating product there, so you just reference it, and then at the end add a shop now with that product, and that just tweaks it to be a little more product oriented. And that's another thing you can do is start looking at like maybe you're getting people to stop on this. If you look at sort of like we'll call it hook rate, which would be like 3-second views over impressions on videos, right? Do people stop on the ad? Are they hooked? If that's the case, but then they don't click and they don't buy, then you could think about using the intro from that ad and tacking on to the back of it, like, okay, some more product-oriented stuff, and begin to get a little bit more iterative over more time. But in the beginning, I would be thinking about net new concepts for you, and then organic content recycled into ads, and kind of see what happens. So let's actually talk more about the media buying setup so that we can continue to think about how we'd set ourselves up for that kind of success. So you've got your attribution setting, CBO at the top, and let's talk about targeting. You've got a few phases here. What I would probably think about is using this structure here. These ads in your phase 2 here right now, where you've got a bunch of exclusions. So you've got all your past customers, your from Klaviyo, which is great. your Instagram engagers, website visitors, all these things. Again, past purchasers from the Pixel looks like it's in here somewhere. Klaviyo syncs, versions of it, all those kinds of things. What I would do is I would go to the one campaign and I would make every ad set the same, which is the only thing I would exclude is past customers. I would roll up your website visitors and your IG engagers and your FB engagers all together. And I wouldn't worry too much. And essentially what I'm saying here is I would let Meta sort out whether or not it should remarket someone or go to someone fresh, etc. And at the exclusions level, that's the only thing I would exclude is past customers. Now, I want to exclude past customers because I want to hold past customers to a higher ROAS target, probably, right? A lot of those people are going to buy anyway, and I don't want to pay for them if I don't have to. So it's not that you can't advertise to past customers. I would just put them at a different target than I would somewhere else. And so that's what I would do. And so now you've got one CBO, ad sets with exclusions of past customers only. You're targeting broad without any exclusion of remarketing. And then let's talk about age and gender. So you're going 25 plus. That makes sense to me. You probably just don't do very well with people younger than 25. I totally get that. So I don't mind a little bit of limitation of the audience there. But let's talk about gender. Now, you guys will have an answer to this right away. You're targeting males only. Is there not any sort of like gift purchasing happening from women in your guys' account or in your guys' business?
It happens. It's just at a lower rate.
Yeah.
And in my experience, anytime we've attempted to target women through Meta, we've paid a lot more per acquisition for it.
Yeah. Okay. So then I don't mind this then. If you're going to go male only, that seems reasonable to me. You could go broad targeting and just sort of let the machine learning figure that out. And it may even be able to, especially if you have you could imagine even creating sort of a gifting angle at some point where you generate ads that you're really aiming you're aiming the creative at women. Now, I wouldn't target women only. Again, the creative is going to do the targeting for you. The creative is going to find a person and then find more people like it, because this is where like broad targeting is helpful. If you target really broadly, creative is targeting in Meta at this point. Meta is going to build its own lookalike audience basically at the ad set level, to where it's going to find more people like the people who are responding to the ads in that ad set and go to them. So if you run an ad that really appeals to 35 to 44-year-old dudes, then it's probably going to keep finding at that ad set level a bunch more 35 to 44-year-old dudes and maybe a certain subset of them, based on if it's a beard product versus something else or whatever. If you were, let's say you cracked creative and you came up with a brilliant idea that was going to be like I don't know, maybe it's just holiday, like a wife buying for her husband or whatever. You could imagine a separate piece of creative in the same CBO where it's like really hitting a wife buying for her husband as the target, and that creative would then be its own angle and its own ad set, and it would sort of repeat targeting there. And so by keeping the actual targeting at the sort of ad set level really broad, like we've got right here, you're going to let Meta go sort out who that creative appeals to. And if it's not going to appeal to women, it basically won't run it to women. So not the end of the world. It's fine with me if you want to kind of keep that male only and you're just saying like, that's who we're going to target, that's who we're going to go after, that's fine. But it's something I would think about in the exclusions. So now one CBO go ahead.
This might be a little bit of a segue in a different subject, and maybe we come back to it later. But it seems like from the comments that the ads get served to a lot of people who aren't our target audience, and we have like a lot of junk you got to clean up, or negativity, or people complaining. Like, I guess how do you handle that? What do you recommend? Do you just delete the comments as they come in and move on?
If it's overtly negative about the product, I delete them. My mentality about this is that if I bought a billboard and I saw somebody graffiti on it like this product sucks, I would probably get a new billboard, and that's basically the way I think about my ads. If it's just general kind of like, I don't know, that dude's beard is gross or whatever, like that's probably not terrible for engagement, and I would let that go. Versus this product doesn't work, I would get rid of this product doesn't work. That's probably the way I'd think about it. And that can make a meaningful difference, by the way, if those negative comments pile up. And to the broader point, Eric, what I would say is like all of your ads are appealing to mostly people who aren't going to do anything, right? Like a good click-through rate is 2%. That means 98 out of 100 people are going to scroll right past your ad. And then of those 2% who click, a pretty good conversion rate is 2%, or 3% or whatever it is. And so So you're getting a subset of a subset. And this is part of the reason why people's instincts around like this will or this won't work are often wrong. Is like, yeah, you wouldn't read or you wouldn't read that whole piece of content. You wouldn't watch that whole piece of content, but I'm not appealing to you. I'm appealing to the subset of people who would. And so I don't really care about like my instinct. I care more about like, is the data going to go find that subset of that subset?
Yeah. Price criticisms, do you tend to cut those off too, or is it something to help weed out the people who are price
like
sensitive?
if it's too expensive?
Yeah.
I don't mind those. I think price signals value, and I think it's fine with me if some people are going to call out that it's a finer product by saying that it's too expensive for them. I think there's a subset of other people who want the price to be higher because they want better quality products, and that's probably who your customer is.
There was a really interesting thing that happened on the one ad that's really gotten a lot of mileage. Every time I look at it, it has like 5 or 6 new comments. And somebody had made a comment about the price being more expensive than they would want for a particular product. And 2 or 3 people organically jumped in and kind of corrected him on his opinion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
There's conversations happening within the ad comments which are really interesting. And I've always had the belief that a little bit of dissenting opinion is okay, because it kind of forces people to take their own opinion. And if their opinion is in agreement with what you're selling, they might feel a little bit more entrenched in that opinion.
I agree. And if you're appealing to everyone, you're appealing to no one, probably, right? Like it just means you're not taking a position on anything. So I think that's fine. What I would say is probably like if you are priced higher, then just think about that in terms of how you're presenting everything else you're doing. And again, this is something that should be, I think, will probably be intuitive to you guys in terms of what you guys have accomplished from a brand perspective in the past. Like, in my view, that's fine. Go get the guy with a little bit more money who really cares about taking care of himself, and think about how the brand communicates to that dude in general. So yeah. Yeah, I've actually thought about this a lot in men's grooming, and sort of even thinking about branding and messaging around masculinity, which is obviously a sort of hot topic in today's culture, and all those things. And being Beardbrand, you guys could probably dive into some of the ways you think about who is our ideal man and what are their values around masculinity, and some of those things that are sort of interesting, and probably in some ways will piss some people off, but will also allow you guys to kind of carve out a space that's your own.
Yeah, and I think we, creatively, we try to differ from a lot of brands in the space, particularly in the beard space, that very directly try to make that direct connection between facial hair and masculinity.
Yeah.
And we try to not do that, and we let customers decide their own definition of what masculinity is.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like a really cheap and stupid way. This is what I mean. Like, you guys wouldn't do this. You're too good of brand people to do this. But there's a way, like, have a beard like a man. Like, it's like, ugh, it's just so cringy and stupid, and like it's like the least creative way to approach brand messaging ever. Whereas like what you guys could do probably is think about like, who is the photo of? What is this saying about sort of the Beardbrand man, and how he cares for himself and his beard, and why he's willing to spend a few dollars on this product that's nicer and better, etc. Like, that's the kind of stuff that's in there. And this is actually one of the things I would say back about like the meta ads thing, is like, people think you can't communicate brand while doing direct response marketing, and I just think that's wrong. Like, you can sell product and have it reinforce brand quality, and talk directly about the product and have it reinforce brand quality in a way that's good for the brand, that I think carves out a space for it. It means being creative about it. But again, this is why I like that you're in the seat you're in, Mike, is like, you're going to have, I think, like even the ads that we were just looking at earlier, it's like a perfect example of, they look good. They feel elevated in a solid way. Like, I think it's a good, yeah, I don't think you're going to have a problem with that. Okay, let's talk about one last part of media buying. And this is something that a lot of people have a hard time with, but I don't even actually totally understand why. And that is cost caps or bid caps. And so at the ad set level, you have the opportunity to set a cost per result goal or a bid cap. The difference between those, actually, cost caps will give you an average CAC. Bid caps will give you a maximum CAC. But either way, you can put in a number that just says, this is what I'm willing to pay for a customer. I am a big fan of bid caps personally because I like the idea of saying if I know that over some certain threshold, I no longer want that customer goes from being a profit center to a cost center, and I don't want to give Zuck my money if I'm not making money, right? Then a bid cap makes a lot of sense to me. And what we can do is we can inform that bid cap basically 100% based off of this. We just say, okay, on a 1-day click basis, if you set a bid cap or cost cap, it will be set according to your attribution settings. So if you switch to 1-day click, then your bid cap or your cost cap will be set according to that 1-day click target. And so this is why it's really important to understand this delayed attribution element as well. So let's drop our AOV down to 44. Again, probably some of these numbers change from there, but let's just say this is gospel, right? Now you need a $30, we dropped it to 44 because that's what we were seeing in the ad account at the AOV level. On 1-day click, you would need essentially a $30 CPA, which would then turn into a $23.34 CPA to get you to first purchase break even, assuming these numbers are right. Again, you can go back later and sort of go from there. So what I would do is probably at an earlier stage of business, I would set my bid cap here a little higher than this, maybe at like $35 or something like that, because I want to err on the side of getting spend and getting data and start getting spend through my ad account. But the great beauty of running things with bid caps is that Meta will only spend if it thinks it can hit your target. And that is awesome because it takes your decision-making about budget out of the way. It also means that Meta will flex your spend relative to how many people on a given time are on the platform that can do that. And what I mean is, on the weekends, there are more daily active users on Facebook and Instagram, which means there are more auctions to win at the same price. On the weekdays, during the workday, as much as people would complain about this sort of thing, actually most people are working, and especially in your target audience, they're working. They're not scrolling Facebook and Instagram all day, whereas like maybe on Saturday morning, they're lounging around their house and they're just scrolling. And so when there's more available inventory on the weekend, a bid cap will allow you to go sort of flex up your spend with that available inventory, and it will flex back down on the weekday. And I've seen this to the point of like 50%, or we'll say 100% more volume sometimes on the weekends for some brands, depending on all kinds of different things. And so that is awesome because that will allow you to flex with the available volume and keep your performance constant. So what I would be doing, and this is the other thing, is like this is the other reason you can freely and safely go add all this organic content to your ad account. If you set a bid cap and let's say you set it at $35, like we just said, right? Then you can go take all this organic content, pump it into your ad account, put it all in these ad sets in one CBO, and now Meta is set up to optimize your spend for the best performers within the CBO, because it will allocate your spend between ad sets, and at each ad set, it will allocate your spend between ads. So basically, you're just saying to Meta, here's the target. Go spend my money as much as possible on the ads that are going to give me the best performance at or under my target, and spend until you hit my target. And if you cannot hit my target, do not spend the money. And that will allow you to then go and do the thing that we first talked about earlier, Mike, which is to test really aggressively, right? To go take your mentality around, I want to know which messages are working. I want to understand this. And you'll know which is working because it's the stuff that it will get spent on, whether that's organic content that's being repurposed, stuff you've used. I would go back through your account and go find ads that were turned off at some point and go launch those into there as well. And I bet you have winners that you don't even know are winners. And if you set the account up to do that. Now, the one thing to watch out for here, when you set that bid cap, is this AOV question, because your CPA will change relative to AOV. Sort of imagine that you have a $100 average order value product here. A 2-to-1 ROAS on $100 is $50 in CPA. A 2-to-1 ROAS on $50 is $25 in CPA, right? Does that make sense? And so this is where you do have to separate out products at the ad set level to make sure that you're getting consistent AOVs at the ad set, because you're going to set your cap at the ad set level. And if this gets complicated enough, there's some other ways to solve it. But while you're running one product, this is actually really easy. You just set the same target across the board and go and spend. Now, there's possibilities that it won't spend, and there's all kinds of details, and I'm happy to follow up with you at some point. Maybe we'll even record a 10-minute bonus episode at some point of like, here's how we solved the it wouldn't spend problem. But I think you probably have creative that can spend at or under your target already made and ready to go. You just have to go set it up for success in your account structure. And that's what I would say. So does what I said just make sense? That was pretty theoretical.
Well, yeah, I got a question. So basically it scales through additional or higher performing content. Like you don't have to adjust your budget at all. You don't have to come in and be like,
Yeah.
all right, I want to spend $500 a day, or
Yeah. In fact, what I'd say
is there any of that involved at all?
No. The only way that would be involved is inventory constraints typically. So like you'll have an ad hit, right? And suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, we can keep spending at or under my target. And so then you do that, and you hadn't planned for that in your inventory forecasting because it's really hard to plan for ads suddenly taking off. And so then you might have to constrain your inventory, you constrain your spend based off of that. But actually what I would do there first is I would actually just lower my bid cap and just take higher margin per product that I have. And I would try as much as possible to sort of sell as much of my product as I could get through without selling out at the highest margin possible. So I just take the most contribution margin possible on each product. Does that make sense?
And you can adjust your bid cap after
anytime
something's been created.
Yeah. That's most of the adjustments I do in an ad account are not budget, they're bid caps. What I would say is if inventory is permitting, you should actually never hit your budget. You should always have your budget higher than your bid cap. And that's because if you hit your budget, that means you actually had more room to spend at or under your target. And that's what you want, right? You want to maximize the volume at or under your target. And so if you hit your budget, that means I would say if you hit your budget 2 days in a row, that means that you should have adjusted your budget up or your bid caps down. You should either take more efficiency per purchase, or you should take more volume at the same efficiency. Always, you should always be taking one of those two things, and that becomes the budget management as you're going, because as long as Meta's spending and your targets are set correctly and your attribution set correctly, it means you should be getting the outcome that you're trying to pursue.
If you have a banger ad that pops, like, what does that look like in terms of like performance? Like, are you going to go from $100 day to a $10,000 day or something like that? Or
I have a client that based on creative spent like 25-30 grand in January and spent 280 grand in August, and we could have gotten there faster. And it was a part of it. This is not the only thing that got that kind of growth, but part of it was exactly what you just said, Eric. A banger ad that it massively outperformed my expectations. Like, this is not because I'm some super genius or anything. It worked really, really well, and we could have actually scaled that a lot faster. But of course, you cannot plan inventory for that. And even if you can, like, the cash movement is really hard in a business to do that. And so, so absolutely, you can see sort of massive scalable growth, which is why people are so set on Meta as a way to do this.
Mike, we got to mute you when you're typing.
Yeah, you're a loud typer, Mike.
Sorry. I was just typing that I need to pause and grab my charger because I am about to die, and I didn't heed the warning at the beginning of this.
That this might go longer than we expect.
Yeah. Hold tight.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and I think, while Mike is doing that, we can actually keep going, Eric, really fast. I'll just say, like, I think this is where, like, you being sort of an idea machine is interesting. Like, if you, with your creative mind, Eric, like, I think if with your powers combined with Mike's and your willingness to get on camera and record stuff and try stuff, I think Beardbrand's going to be uniquely positioned to generate creative concepts that sell product, and to sort of, you also have a long history of learning, like seeing feedback from an algorithm about what's working or not, and then creating more of it. It's the same exact game on Meta ads. You're going to start to see stuff that's like, oh, if we do this to the content, it effectively scales in a way that, just like on your YouTube account, right? And so you're going to be able to, I think, do that, interpret the results, and I bet you with you and Mike sort of combined, you're going to be able to generate that content really, really fast and try new iterations really, really fast. And then it becomes a game of sort of operations of, scaling inventory and all those kinds of things. But I'm confident you guys will be able to accomplish that.
I am back.
Great. Welcome back. Okay. So just one more time recap the way we talked about the setup here. One CBO. I would launch my creative tests right into that CBO. I would launch it in a new ad set, because the other thing is, you actually don't care about if your creative test works. What you care about is, how does it work relative to other options? And in a CBO, if you set the campaign budget at the top, if your new ads work, then that ad set that you launch them in will just rise up and eat up and take over the spend. Occasionally, new ad sets will get very little spend for whatever reason, and so you may start your bid cap a little higher than the rest of your bid caps would be at the account level. And when you launch new creative, $5 or $10 higher or something like that, just to feed it some initial data and then move it back down. But even that I've found to be only rarely necessary. I think Meta can learn very, very fast what works, and we'll start launching those things to the top pretty quickly. I've definitely launched ads where my CBO is going, I launch a new ad set with ads in it, and the new ad just shoots to the top, takes over the whole spend in the account. And that's what you want to set up to do. And then from there, as you do all of that work, you're going to get a bunch more data really fast. And that's where you can kind of move into the sort of iterative mode of, okay, how do I adjust this content? Now, how do I create new variations from there? The other thing you can do is almost anytime I create a video, I will create the body and the sort of CTA portions of the video, and if I'm going to do any validation or guarantee, hey, we got a 30-day money back guarantee, anything like that, body validation and CTA all the same, but I'll just write 6 hooks for it because there's just so much value to be gained out of doing that. And if you go to an editor and they can edit one body portion of the ad down through the end, but then they can just attach 6 hooks to the front, it's going to make their job a lot easier as well. And for you, it sort of will allow you to target okay, what happens if I try and go I don't know, funnier or more product focused or more direct? There's a lot of different ways to play with almost any piece of creative. And so that will allow you to test stuff from the beginning and spin out concepts, and you'll see stuff really rise to the top doing that. Okay. There's a lot more we could say about creative for you. I think you could get more directly product focused. That's the one feedback I have from the creative in your account, and really try to flex the direct response muscle a little bit. Go read David Ogilvy and see what he's doing. And I mean, he did a lot of brand stuff too, but just those kinds of things, or go read the old mass sales letter copywriters, those kinds of people, and just sort of pick up on some of those tricks. I know you also want to be really protective of the brand at the same time. So there's some probably tactics that you're not going to use at Beardbrand that other people would be more comfortable using, but which I think is great. You guys are trying to build something you're proud of and enduring. So yeah, but yeah, I think those are the kinds of things that I would consider. But if you've got that account set up from there, then I think you'll be well positioned for success.
Sweet. Andrew, do you have a recommended campaign budget to start with?
Above whatever you're actually spending. So right now you've spent 20 grand in the last 30 days. I'd probably put it at 2-3 grand. And the more, something like that, again, because I just never want to spend through it. If you're running caps, that's what I would do. And again, if you hit it, scale. Just keep an eye on that 1 day click ROAS. If that 1 day click ROAS looks like it's going to ladder to, relative to that economic sheet, is going to ladder to the 28 day click ROAS that you want, start scaling, watch your new customer revenue, and see what happens. And then shoot me an email. I have access to your accounts, and I'm happy to look at it with you. So, yeah.
Yeah, maybe once I get it set up, I'll have you pop in there
100%,
and just make sure it looks right.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no problem. Okay, any questions while we wrap up?
I mean, Mike, what do you think, comparing the two strategies between, because I know we talked about this before the call, and how you do like to tinker and,
yeah, around. I mean, it seems to me like just a different way of doing the same thing, essentially. So, two sides of the same coin, if you will.
Yeah. I think you're going to be able to scale a lot faster the way that I'm suggesting it, and test a lot more quickly. I think that's the big advantage to it. That's my guess.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I like that. Normally if I'm trying out an ad and I'm basing whether or not I think it will work on how it does in a click campaign, I'm taking out that step, and basically if it's not going to work, then Facebook's just not going to spend money on it, is what I'm taking away. So there's nothing to really lose there. Whereas with what I'm currently doing, I am losing some money through testing for clicks. Even if it's only $10 a pop, that still adds up if I'm testing 100 ads a month or whatever.
It also assumes that the click behavior of that subset of customers is going to ladder to purchase. And I have seen plenty of times where higher clicks doesn't actually equal that in the same way,
I've seen that too. So there's no guarantee based on a 4%
Right.
click rate in that phase 1 test that
Yeah.
it's going to convert in a conversion campaign.
It's probably a decently strong signal, but just when you put it into run to converters, you'll get that same signal, right? You'll get it'll be not as good as the click campaign signal is because the people who are when you optimize for link clicks, like the thing I think many people don't realize is that like when you optimize for clicks, what you're actually optimizing for is a subset of users on the platform, right? And so it's people who click on ads. That's what you are optimizing for, but it doesn't say anything about their purchase behavior. Whereas when you optimize for purchases or for conversions, you're optimizing for the subset of people who are willing to click on an ad and buy it, which is kind of its own behavior. The best illustration of this is that like there's a lot of people who have tried the tactic of optimizing for add to cart because they're like, oh, like if I'm not getting enough data at the purchase level, if I optimize for add to cart, then maybe I can get those people to add to cart. I'll get more data into meta, and then those people will buy. But what you actually end up getting is a bunch of people who add to cart and don't buy because there's some set of maniacs in the world who go to all kinds of e-commerce websites, click on e-commerce ads, add things to the cart, and never purchase. And I can't believe this behavior exists, but it does. And so
I think that's Eric. Eric is that kind of maniac.
I could see that.
I want to see everyone's flows. I want to see their abandoned cart emails.
Yeah,
he was just telling me about it this morning.
It's all e-commerce professionals. That's all who you're advertising to right there, and just email marketers. That's who it is. Yeah, that's funny. Cool. Any other questions on this approach?
No, sounds good. I'm excited to try it.
All right, awesome. Well, yeah. So I think your kind of semi-skepticism to start makes sense. What I've found is that typically people will not be true believers in this until they've seen it work, and that's perfectly reasonable. You shouldn't be. And so I think it's worth a try, especially in the phase you're in. Guys, Eric, especially because you are the person who owns the company, I super appreciate you being willing to share so much stuff with so much transparency with people. I think it will really help them. I get questions about this kind of stuff all the time, about like campaign setup, etc. If we can do any kind of a follow-up or something after you've set it up and we could show people that would be awesome, so people can kind of see how this actually worked out. But hopefully people kind of have a sense of how to do it from here. So I think you've been a great help to a bunch of e-commerce people who will definitely watch this and check it out. Everybody should go listen to E-commerce Conversations with Eric, his podcast as well, and then go buy some beard oil.
Absolutely.
Anything
Thanks
else?
for having us on. Happy to share and hopefully help everyone level up and create the life they know they can have.
Awesome. Mike, thanks, man. I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew.
All right. See you guys. Hey, quick interruption from me again. You just heard us wrapping up part 1 of the conversation. We're now going to go forward in time about a month to Mike and I following up. Eric couldn't join us for the follow-up call. That's okay. But Mike and I followed up to talk about what the account looks like after we started implementing some of the changes we talked about and what we would do next from there to keep forward progress happening. So let's go forward a month in time to my conversation with Mike following up. Mike, maybe what we can do to start. Welcome back, by the way. Thanks for taking more time.
Yeah, thanks for taking more time.
We ditched Eric. We ditched the dead weight of Eric. He's gone.
Eric is in Terlingua at the chili competition right now.
Is that real? Is that what's happening right now?
Yeah. It's like the biggest chili cook-off in Texas is in Terlingua, just outside of Big Bend.
Is he eating chili or is he cooking chili?
He better be eating chili.
Yeah.
I don't know that Eric cooks. So.
Okay, got it. That is so awesome. Where is Terlingua? That is something.
Terlingua is this little tiny town just outside of Big Bend National Park.
Where's that?
That is like, if you can picture Texas.
Yep.
I've always pictured Texas as like a bird flying upside down. And so like El Paso is the tip of the beak. And there's kind of like the head that goes down along the Rio Grande River. Yeah. Big Bend is kind of like a big chunk of what I call that bird head. None of this is like technical
on the west side of Texas, right?
Yeah, it's far west Texas.
Yeah.
It's like it's near the border, right near the Rio Grande, and Terlingua is kind of this like famous ghost town / there's like an actual ghost town in Terlingua. West Texas desert town that's pretty remote.
Yep.
And they do a huge chili cook-off every October.
Yeah, that is awesome. I had no idea. That's amazing. That sounds like a really fun time, actually, a unique event.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, Eric is eating chili, but Mike and I are building businesses over here while Eric is eating chili, and so just getting after it. So, all right. So let's talk about kind of where the account is. So I'm going to share my screen, and that way we can kind of poke back around where things have gotten to. So let's actually go back to September so people can kind of see how that all ended up. And so, Mike, maybe let me just I'll give you a couple observations that I see here, and then you can kind of fill in from there. So, previously there were these sort of multi-phase approaches to the ad account. We spent about 28 grand in September. 7-day click, 1-day view attribution says we returned about 30 grand, but 28-day click attribution says we returned about 27. So I'm going to take the click attribution there and say that's probably the most accurate representation. As usual, actually, for people running 7DC, 1DV attribution, these numbers end up being fairly close to each other. But about 27 grand, so a 0.97 ROAS on the whole. You said September 28th or so, you sort of implemented the structure that we talked about on our last call, which was move to a single consolidated CBO within that a whole bunch of ad sets. They started to go spending in September. You can see here, there's that one CBO, all bid capped, all bid controlled. And what happened was something like what you might expect at first if you're running the same assets, which is we spent about 10 grand less last month at 16.6 grand. But we returned about 22 grand, so for 1.33 ROAS, which means we spent 7 grand less for $4,000 less in revenue, which is cutting off basically the dead weight in the spend, which is really good. So that's a step forward. We're obviously not to a point here where we've unlocked a $300,000 a month spend or anything like that. The results aren't super crazy, but when you go look at the actual setup, you've done, I think, a really good job here, which is launched a bunch of ad sets against each other. Broad targeting mostly, maybe limit to 25 plus male. That makes perfect sense to me that you just cut off the parts of the audience that you're pretty confident are not going to be buying from you. So it's male and maybe an age cutoff, but otherwise broad targeting. And you've got some clear stuff rising to the top here in the spend. All bid caps you can see here in these, and now kind of this is where we're at. So why don't you fill in any other gaps that you want to fill in, Mike, about sort of where things are at and what you're seeing and what you're thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it makes sense. I had to spend a bit of time. I had to really kind of over exaggerate those bid caps in the beginning and gradually walk them down. I haven't been able to quite get them down as low as I would like.
Yeah. Because it'll just cut off spend completely.
Because it just yeah. And even like where they're at now, I'm still getting a lot of bid limited or learning limited messages in my ad sets.
You'll get bid limited forever. That's Meta's way of saying we would really like you to spend more money. And there's more volume here if you bid. Like bid limited is exactly what you're asking the bid caps to do, right? To limit the spend. It's saying the bid is limiting your spend. You're going like, yes, great. That's the point. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think what I have seen is Meta kind of focusing more on your big picture average CPA. So I'll have some days where my CPA is like up around $90. And then I'll have just some days that are really good where that CPA is around $20 to $30. And it kind of just depends on the day. And in like you said, big picture, it has cut out some of the dead weight spend, and at least has made the account a little bit more efficient.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say two things about that right away, and this is like the sort of hard reality is that like the truth is we're actually not all the way to the targets that we need to get to for this to scale at the unit economics that we discussed on the last call. And so the reason that you're dropping the bid further and further is cutting off the spend completely is because that's Meta's way of telling you your creative is not there yet. It's not getting you the return that you need. It's not producing the kind of outcome that you need for you to scale the spend at your requested CAC. And that's annoying, but it's also, and I actually think what you're doing here is right, which is like spend comes back, you make it a little more efficient, waste a little less money, and at the same time, you keep some spend going because you just are at a phase where you need to be spending something to learn. So if the bid cap cut the spend completely, you have to have some idea of kind of what creative is moving in the right direction or not. So there's that. But what I'll say is it's telling you you haven't done it yet creative wise. And so that is like one of the great things I think about running bid caps is it will force the issue on you. It will tell you like, nope, you're not there yet. And it's not a bidding problem, it's not a targeting problem, and it's not any of those things. What it is a creative problem. And once the creative is where it needs to be, then it will work. Now there's a particular dynamic right now, which is that we're like recording this 3 weeks before Black Friday or 3.5, 4 weeks before Black Friday. So there's going to be a particular element here where people are likely to click today and buy in 4 weeks, and that's going to make your one-day results look worse, etc. But most of this is not in that kind of time range. So yeah.
I will say where I'm the most excited is in the 28-day click results. I'm like, oh, that looks great. I like those numbers. And again, I think for us, big picture, we're really only 3 months in to getting our account going again. And I think we alluded to this in the earlier part of the episode that we got out of Meta and paid social for over a year. So kind of our initial goal was like, if we can just hit a 1 ROAS and get the ball moving, we can live with that. So to see the number go from a 0.97 to a 1.33, that
meaningful progress.
It's it's good to see. And now it's just like, okay, let's figure out the creative aspect and keep building.
Yeah, it's a very helpful perspective, I think. And what I'll say is like most accounts, like for people watching or listening or reading, about or watching or listening to this, or if you're following on Twitter, people talk about like, oh, how does ad take off and take over the account? Like the truth is, most times, like victories in almost every area of business, I think, are sort of incremental. Like, and so like I have a client right now where we went from 33 grand in spend 1 month to 61 grand in spend the next month, and that is not where I'm trying to get them to. I'm trying to get them to 200 or whatever. But the truth is, like, the way they have gotten from 33 to 61 is by a whole bunch of ads working pretty decently, whereas before they had only a couple ads working pretty decently. We don't have like the mega smash hit ad yet that's taken over the account and just like launched us to 5xing our spend or anything like that. And that's actually how most accounts work, is that like you keep putting more creative towards it, and especially with something like bid caps, you sort of get each piece to go as far as you can go. You learn from what is happening with your spend, and you go from there. So this is, I think, what you're seeing here is pretty normal in terms of like, okay, you've got some one step forward, which is that we've cut off some bad spend from the account. We've got a restructured account, and we can say there's actually some interesting signs in here, which is that your top spending campaigns running at a 0.92 one-day click and a 1.11. I'm not going to worry too much about that being exactly where we want it to be, but your number 2 is at a 1.6 on a one-day click and a 1.97, and the gap between those two is AOV. And so this is like one of the things about buying with bid caps, is that when you buy with bid caps, you've got to be aware of the difference in AOV at each ad set level. This is a tricky thing. It's probably the hardest part about buying with bid caps, I think, which is that a 2-to-1 ROAS at a $45 AOV, let's just do simple math here, would be what, $22.50. Basically, let's call it a $45 AOV. Let's call it a $58 AOV here. For a $58 AOV, a 2-to-1 ROAS would be what, $29. And so the bid cap there, relative to the same ROAS goal, is different because your CAC is to produce the same ROAS at a higher AOV, your CAC is higher, and therefore your bid cap should be higher. So you've got that baked in. You've got a higher bid cap here than here, 60 versus 50. So you're obviously doing that to some degree as well. But that's the kind of thing to keep paying attention to as well, as like different. As you advertise different products, as you advertise different offers, as you do those sorts of things in each ad set, to make sure you're paying attention to those things and to let sort of Facebook work it out from there.
Cool.
Okay, so those are a couple notes to start. So let's talk more about kind of where you're trying to get to, and if there's any places you're feeling stuck and what you want to make happen going forward now that we've got a sort of correct structured account and all those things. Correct as far as I see it.
Sure.
So where do you want to try and where are you trying to get to next?
More spend my
Okay.
money, take my money.
Yeah.
It's like I'm trying to give Facebook my money, and they're like, actually,
Yeah.
we're gonna
Yeah.
not take
They're
your
putting
money
that
for
they're putting
once.
that bid limit in front of you so that they could get so that you would do more. But yeah.
Yeah. I think like a couple things that I'm seeing is I've got I my focus is more video.
That's what you're working on
Um,
now?
is to
Okay.
create more video content, video ads, and it's kind of been a little bit of a slow process because I'm both trying to get new content from people and also mining through a lot of old content to try to find what is usable. And a lot of it's not because we changed a lot of our products. We did a lot of streamlining to our product offering. So a lot of the previous video content we have and a lot of the older video ads that we have are for products or bundles that we're not selling anymore. So I'm kind of starting from scratch in terms of creating that. So that's kind of been a little bit of a slower process than I want it to be. Um, but some of the video
Yeah.
that I have in there doesn't seem to perform as well as the static images.
Hmm.
Like I tend to see a higher CPA across the board with video and a more
Yep.
expensive cost per click. Um, and one thing I did was I initially had all of my and the main product that I've been advertising still is the utility oil. I've started to introduce some other products, but the utility oil is really kind of the hero product, and I think that ultimately that's going to be the one that if anything's going to unlock the spend, it's probably that product.
Is that true
Um,
across the board for Beardbrand? Like that product is the number one product you guys sell?
mhm.
Okay, then I think you're. Let me just pause there and just say I think you're right to. Um, I think you're right uh, to put all your attention on that if possible, because one of the things you're going to have to do is limit the. There's going to be so many available options for next changes to make that you have
Mhm.
to sort of limit the uh, the next the next thing you do in some way or another. And so I think saying like, okay, if we're gonna win on this product is a great start. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so initially, I had three UGC style videos that were in one ad set, and I was kind of getting this message from Facebook that was like, "Your ad sets are too similar. You should condense them." And so I did that, and I moved those. I moved the two best performing UGC videos. I turned off one because it was
Yeah.
really similar
Sure.
to
Sure.
another one.
Yeah.
Like the only difference was kind of the text animation.
Yep.
Um, so I turned that one off. I moved the other two into an ad set with some other static images. I don't know if that was the right move.
Yeah. It's probably in the margins. Like that kind of movement in the ad account is fine to do some more consolidation. You're not spending enough money to where you're going to get lots and lots. I mean, the reason you're stuck in learning is because you're not quite getting enough purchases. By the way, another thing I'll flag that you said earlier, I meant to say this earlier, is the daily volatility you're seeing in performance is really normal,
Mm-hmm.
and it's part of the reason to use caps because me, the human media buyer who gets jumpy and wants to make changes fast and try to make something happen, I'm like tempted to go, oh, good spend day, like keep it going, whereas or like, oh, it's crappy today, like kill the spend. Whereas the truth is, the actual prediction of what's going to happen next is based on a much larger sample size. It's based on some kind of regression model, I'm assuming. I think Facebook's machine learning is based on Bayesian logic about sort of how to predict the future. And so, anyway, the point is that you would be able to you and I are very prone, and every human is very prone to overreact to a small sample, but you're just sort of constantly living in small sample size land right now. Just like the example I always give is like if you flip a coin 10 times, you're gonna only get five heads and five tails like 25% of the time. I think if you do a set of 10 coin flips, So the truth is, even though you always expect that a 50% heads, 50% tails long-term ratio, just the nature of small sample sizes being what they are, you're just going to get wide variability. And I think you're probably dealing with that in this account. So anyway, small changes around media buying tactics here are probably a smaller element of what's going on. And so some little bits of consolidation, stuff like that is totally fine. I think it's not a big deal to try and limit the number of ad sets that you have running, consolidate a little bit more, and get out of learning wherever you can. But that's going to help you on the margins. I think the big thing here is the creative issue that you're getting at. And it sounds like your assets are a little limited because you've made some changes to the product or changes to the account. Maybe what we could do is talk about a way forward creatively for you that maybe would help you organize your thinking around that creative to some degree. Would that be? Did you want to ask any more specific questions, or would that be?
Yeah, I've got one more. Maybe one or two more questions. I think when we initially talked, it was kind of like the strategy was just throw ads in there and just keep them on.
Yep.
Is there a point where you look at something and just say, this is just not working? Like, for example, I have this one ad set, and it's only got one ad in it, this Whiskey River large comb. And I think...
I can pull it up.
Yeah, I mean, I've got one 7-day click conversion at a $269 CPA. Like it's just not converting. Is that worth continuing to, even if it's only spending a few bucks a day? Is that the kind of thing where you're like, it's
I think
it's
kill
just
it. Sure.
Okay.
I have no problem with the idea that you would just like go, let's get rid of it. And I mean, I don't know about like scissors, but could be something similar to where, there's like if it's a secondary product, then you just want to say like, because like what you are going to have to do is like you don't have endless resources here, and so like I don't hate the idea at all of like, or set the bid cap on those. This is the other way you could do this. Set the bid cap on those to your actual true target. That way you never have to look at it ever again. And so if it spends 10 cents a day, that's fine. You're welcome to, you can kill that too. That's fine. If it's spending so little, it's very unlikely to turn around at any point. But basically, like what you don't want to do is get into this world where you're trying to squeeze something out of it. Like, what you're saying earlier, right, where you're keeping your bid caps a little higher than your actual true sort of reserve bid, is because the reason why you're doing that is so that you keep some spend flowing to these so that you can learn some. But I don't think you're going to do lots of iteration on combs, and I'm guessing not on scissors. And so I think it's perfectly fine to just sort of kill those, like, or just leave them at the, like, don't play that game of keeping the bid higher than you actually want. Instead, just get rid of them and keep your spend and your attention on the highest leverage things. And later on down the line, if you get to a $200,000 a month spend and you're killing it and you're feeling awesome about it, then it's like, okay, now you're going to have sort of some learnings around how to think about creative for this account, what works for your customer, all those things, to where maybe you come back to the well and put together scissors or comb and something else in a bundle and make an ad out of it or whatever. But for now, I think that's what I would say is either set it at your true bid or kill it.
Cool. Other question I have, as I'm adding new creative into existing ad sets, and I know you alluded to it in the earlier portion of the conversation about there being some belief out there that 6 ads per ad set is kind of the max. Yeah. And I've seen like some Facebook tutorials where they tell you 5.
Yeah.
How much do you subscribe to that? Do you try to keep your ad sets to 6 or less, or do you just say, if it makes sense, just pile it in?
I run 6 or 6 or less all the time, but this, like you just alluded to, my confidence is low on this piece of advice. I haven't seen it be a problem for me to run 6. If you want to do 5, that's fine. The other way you could do this is actually run these all as dynamic creative testing ads, where you can actually put 10 into one ad, and that's the entire ad set. That's the way those work. And so then you can drop 10 in there and let Meta work it out. That would get you the same kind of thing, where you're just giving Meta a bunch of copy and a bunch of images and a bunch of videos and saying, go put them all together however you see fit. That's kind of what you're doing here anyway. So that would be a perfectly fine way to do this. But there's a small reason I don't prefer doing that, which is that you get less visibility to some of the data involved. But anyway, yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that sort of rule. Do 5, do 6, whatever, and go from there. And if somebody from Meta is watching this and can tell me definitively, or some other viewer or listener is consuming this content and can tell me definitively whether or not it's right or wrong, I'd be glad for the input, because it's an old guideline that I'm working from there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then so like, let's say for example, let's say I've got 6 ads in one ad set, and I want to add some new creative that is like kind of an iteration of those, or, let's take this kind of fragrance focused utility oil ad set, for example. That's been one of the best performing ad sets. As I want to start to create new ads around that kind of messaging, and I currently only have 4 active in there. But let's say I had 6 active in there and I wanted to add more. Would it make sense to put it into that ad set or move it into a new ad set?
Yeah, I mean, this ad set is out of learning, and by adding new ads in there, you may kick it back into learning. So I would probably run it as a new ad set. That's my general rule. And if it spends, and it will get you out of learning on that one at some point too. That's probably the way I would approach this. Is to think about how do you sort of add a new ad set in there. But I'll actually say something else, which is that I think what you're saying is like new angle, new messaging, something like that. I'm going to push you to try and think broader about creative diversification than that. So now, I'm working off of some assumptions about the way that Beardbrand thinks about its brand, because I know that I've heard Eric say things like the brand comes first and some of those kinds of things, that there's a mentality around how the brand presents itself that might, I don't know, you guys might be at a win at all costs kind of phase. I'm not sure, but within whatever brand standards you guys have set as like the boundaries for how the brand operates, I would try to be as diverse in your creative approach as possible, and I would really, really try to avoid tweaks right now. And if you just think simply here, the one of the dangers is to sort of think about this as like an optimization problem, which is like you need to get the messaging just right or whatever. I would say instead you have an order of magnitude problem. You don't have an optimization problem. I want to see this spend get to, let's just call it 6 figures. Let's say if you got to $100,000 a month, I think everybody at Beardbrand would be thrilled if you could make that happen, right? So let's call that. Well, in the last 30 days, you've spent 16 grand. So that means you're not going to tweak your way to 7xing your spend. You're going to get there with major unlock type changes that are going to make a big difference. And so then once you start to see ads really hit, like if you see an ad that starts on its own spending a couple grand a day, which totally can happen, then at that point, then it's like, okay, now you make tweaks and revisions of that ad, etc., and go from there. But I would avoid sort of subtler optimizations and move towards like bigger creative swings.
Yeah, and I think maybe tweaks and revisions was the wrong choice of words.
Yeah, sure.
On my part. Yeah. Because it is like kind of, I'm not trying to just create another version of the same ad, but
yeah,
I think kind of like when I say revision, I mean kind of just taking something that was already like kind of like what's the focus of the messaging? Is it fragrance forward? Yeah. Okay, how do I create that? Seems to be resonating well. I want to create more content around fragrance, but not necessarily the same type of ad, the same style of ad.
Great.
Yeah, I've got a whole list of styles that are like it's just a matter of getting that content created now. And we're such a small team that I'm kind of like, it's on me to kind of write and script and then get all that information to our video editor. And then also trying to get new content from some of our creators to get more UGC style that isn't just customers, a little bit more professional looking. So I'm kind of just like, I'm a little bit in the weeds right now of just being a one-man team trying to get everything organized.
100%. And that is actually one of the challenges that you have, and that almost anybody has this phase of things, which is that you just don't have like resources to blow on this, and you're not just like drowning in resources that are sitting around twiddling their thumbs, and you get to go like, utilize them all, right? Everybody's already doing probably a bunch of things. You're not a huge team, like you said. Like, it makes perfect sense to me what you're saying. So I totally see that problem. So then actually one of the things that we kind of have to solve is like, how do we move towards like, I think the way to think about this, I think this is a phrase I first heard from Taylor Holiday, but I think is a helpful way to think about this, which is like cost to impact ratio on your creative swings. And so what you got to figure out is how you can develop potentially high impact stuff at a low cost. And by cost, I mean dollars, but also time. Like, what are the things that you can do that are relatively quick, that are meaningfully different, that fit within what Beardbrand is trying to accomplish. And so, yeah, so I think this is where like you could think about a lot of different kinds of stuff. So what are you thinking of right now, or what are your like core ideas now that would maybe be able to move that forward?
I think there's a bunch of just really simple stuff I need to just film on my phone, and I might just need to step.
Will you be in the ad?
I think so.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of video creation's not my strong suit, and like setting up a shoot is not my strong suit. So that's kind of like what I need to focus on right now, is figuring out a space, a vibe, and an aesthetic to kind of just tackle a bunch of this video creation myself.
Yeah. So another thing I'll sort of put my finger on there is like this, video creation is not my strong suit. When you say that, what do you mean? When you say it's not your strong suit, what do you mean?
I don't, and with my background being as a writer, I don't consider myself to have the keenest eye in terms of what looks good. And so how I frame a shot, or how the shot is lit, or some of that stuff is where I don't feel as confident as our art director, for example, so I just need to kind of lean on her to help me get kind of like just like a station set up, that like this is where we shoot, this is what it's got to look like.
Right.
Because like once I know it, and I'm like, I can like easily be like, do replicate X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And I can replicate it. It's just a matter of like coming up with the kind of vibe and the concept and the aesthetic. That's not really something that I'm super confident in.
Yeah, I think that's great news, actually. And the reason why is that I have an opinion about this, as at least for I think a lot of the most important buckets of creative in digital advertising, is that like I actually want people who are writers first and creators second, like video people second, to be generating creative that sells product. David Ogilvy actually made this point, the great advertiser from Ogilvy and Mather, like sort of the goat in direct response and a lot of other advertising. He makes a big point that copywriters are the most important people in advertising firms. And he was a copywriter, so maybe maybe he had some bias involved there. But the basic point that he's getting at actually is that the messaging is overall far more important than anything else that you're doing, and that you can figure out sort of like creative styles that work for any medium that you want to use. And I think that makes sense. In the current world of digital, it means that like you can think about sort of what's socially native with in terms of the type of content that people are used to on their feeds, and but that's so solvable. That's like such an easier problem to solve, I think, than generating compelling messaging. And like you said, you have an art director who you can lean on there, who can like maybe even set you up a station or something where it's like, put your phone here, turn this light on, press record, and go. That is like exactly the way to think about this. So I think what I would say there is like, how much can you and probably Eric just start like banging out messaging between you guys are both creative and clever and have all these ideas, like, and then how many of those ideas can you get into an account fast now and spin into edits? And I think if you have the ability to write, then that's the crucial thing. I'm like 100% convinced that messaging wins the day. And the thing is with that, I'll just say that like direct response messaging is a particular kind of messaging. What I think is like if you think about this problem as like creative and as like generating ad ideas in 4 buckets for scripts. So it's like not buckets, in a 4-step format for scripts. So I would look at it as like hook, and when you go to record an ad, anytime you go record an ad, try to record 4 to 6 hooks on any piece of content, right? So just think like, if this is what the main message of the thing is, like here's why this beard oil is great, it smells awesome, blah blah blah. That's the main message you're trying to sell. Come up with 4 to 6 hooks that like lead into that. One of them is like, you know, somebody getting their nose all up in your beard and smelling it. You know, another one is like whatever. Like just think of any way to try and capture somebody's attention. One of them should be really, really direct. This is the best smelling beard oil in the world. Like, you know what I mean? Like literally be that direct about it, right? And use that as your control, and then just come up with a bunch of clever ideas from there. You're a writer. I think this will be no problem for you. Come up with 4 to 6 hooks. Attach all of those onto one body, where the body is like the education about the product, okay? Super product focused. Here's why this is great. Here's the ingredients that matter. Here's why it's cleaner. Here's why, whatever it is that separates this from other products. That's where you want that there. And then ad validation. We have a bajillion 5-star reviews, add a guarantee. You 30-day money back guarantee, whatever. Just like take people's risk out of it. Anything that's true about that. So validation and guarantee is step 3. Number 4, offer and CTA. You should get it right now because you can get this percentage off. Go shop right now. So hook, body, validation, guarantee, offer and CTA. And that's the way that I think about a lot of advertising. That can be a 30-second ad with all 4 of those steps. It can be a 5-minute ad with all 4 of those steps. And don't resist long. It's okay if it's long. Like just worry about good. Don't worry about long. And if you do that and you try that on your products and you try and come up with a few different angles like that, one of them is fragrance oriented, one of them is, quality oriented, one of them, whatever you guys, how soft it'll make your beard feel, like whatever the value propositions are of the product. If you work through that as like a core type of product, that will get you somewhere, and then try to keep that messaging as tight as possible. And because you're a writer, you will do a better job of this than many people who are video first, who I think really struggle a lot of times to be clear and direct in their messaging.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Great. Okay, so I also think people tell themselves lies about how good they are on camera or how good it looks. I don't think this needs to look that good. I think at this stage of the game, as long as no one in the brand is going to kill you for making something they don't like, hit record and go. Like, I think don't let perfect be the enemy of the good here. Just get stuff into the account and move.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Anything else on your sort of questions and thoughts about how to approach any of this? And then if not, I have one other thing we can walk through that I think may help you think through some of this.
Yeah. I think I know the answer to this already, but just testing out new landing pages, new offers, just put those into new ad sets.
Yep. Yeah. The key there is like, as long as the offer, you just have to, it's anytime when the price is going to change or the AOV is going to change or something like that, which is what with a new offer it probably is, needs to be in its own ad set when you're running bid caps. Not as big of a deal when you're running minimum ROAS, but with bid caps, it matters to get that right. Yeah. Because otherwise the AOV is going to change to each ad set level, and you got to have the bid cap relative to the AOV.
Right.
So, yep.
Okay.
Okay. So let me walk through my creative buckets. Maybe it'll help you.
Sure.
And then we can go from there. Okay, I'm going to pull up one example here of the type of ad that I'm thinking of.
And I wish I have my list is in the other room. I'm so old school, man. I write everything down.
Yeah.
Like notebooks, napkins. Just I have stuff everywhere. It's just how I work. I am not in the 21st century.
No, it's all good. Whatever you got to do. Okay, I'm going to share with you my 10 creative buckets. This was recently 8, but I've moved it to 10. And
I wonder if it's the same 10 that I have.
Oh, that would be funny. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. All right. So here's 10 creative buckets. I am currently working through my own build of operational processes to support all of these 10. And these vary in the amount of cost involved with creating these ads and the amount of effort significantly. And so the sort of, in my view, the perfect ad account has all 10 of these and probably some stuff I'm not thinking of. All right, so let's just kind of go in order here. Edited stills and GIFs. This is the kind of stuff you're already running. Just simple still images, clear headline on the image, maybe turn it into a GIF, etc. We can move on. Everybody knows what that image looks like. Just your sort of classic display ad type of ad. Right there. Absolutely worth doing. I think the ideal way to do this is to make them really product focused and generate, I don't know, 10 of them per week with an outsourced designer if you could. Give that person a series of headlines and a bunch of different image styles and have them go, and just make it a task. Here's these headlines. You can always use these. Organize them, add little features and benefits and callouts, and give me a bunch of options. Load them to the account. That's try to mass create those. Don't try to make them perfect. Just try to do a high volume. Okay. I'll pause each one. Any questions about that? Anything there?
No, I think that's what we've leaned on heavily so far.
100%. Text and context stills. What I mean here is where the text or the headline is actually in the image. The most famous example of this right now is the Post-it note ad, which you may have seen around. People are all over this, where it's the product, and then instead of overlaying text on an image by a graphic designer, the image includes a Post-it note with stuff written on it about the product. So you could do this a million ways. People do the Post-it note ad. I think the letterboard version of it works. You could write stuff on a whiteboard, or you could have somebody putting their beard oil in a mirror. I think this would actually work really well for you. Putting your beard oil I'm sorry if I'm saying the product wrong, but or the balm or whatever in a mirror. And on the mirror, you've got writing on the mirror that says something. So it would be a still image of somebody applying it, and literally somebody has written on the mirror what the headline is. You could get 10 of those images. Again, if you just come up with 10 headlines that work, the best smelling beard fragrance in the world, boom. Now you just shoot it, and it doesn't matter how good it looks. I can't even tell you how crappy of a photo I have taken and had to spend a lot of money. I am like you. I'm a writer first, and I'm terrible with visual stuff, and yet I've taken terrible photos on my phone that brands are almost embarrassed to run, that have spent thousands and thousands of dollars. So there you go. Okay, so you can go. Chalk on the ground. Anything you can write. Take your whole idea that you just suggested, which is that you're writing notes all over your house. It sounds like, and just turn those into ads, basically. Right?
Yeah.
Again, just produce those quick. Take a picture with your phone. Put it on the ad account. Full edit explainer video. That's what we talked about a second ago, which would be the explainer video would be like that 4-step process where you're going multiple hooks, body, validation guarantee, offer CTA. I'll actually just write that in 4 steps where it's hooks, hook. Let's go multiple variations, body, validation and guarantee, offer and CTA. Build it in that format. Walk through, tell people what the product is. By full edit, what I mean is it might be you talking as the core thing, but intercut with a bunch of B-roll. You could imagine you saying, here's how great this stuff is, and then it cuts over to B-roll of Bandholz putting it in his beard or whatever it is, just kind of working back and forth so that it's sort of edited together in a way where you're using B-roll to paper over anything where there's where the person talking to the camera looks bad, or screws up or whatever. You use B-roll to cover any of those spots in the edit. That way the person doesn't have to do a great job delivering it. And then you also use this to use B-roll to illustrate key points by bringing the product in and those kinds of things. So this could just this is talking head intercut with B-roll. And the key here is deep explainer. Again, I've seen these have massive impact on ad accounts. Again, hundreds of thousands of dollars on these kinds of ads where it's just walking through the product in this format. You do multiple hooks and you run them all in the same ad account. It's one core ad with multiple hooks in one ad set. Simple explainer video is a variation of the same concept, but this is where you're just not going to let the edit process slow you down. So this is again, I've seen these work pretty well. Not hundreds of thousands of dollars, but tens of thousands of dollars, where it's just somebody who is straight up records themselves. This is easy to do on your computer. Just use your computer camera and give yourself some kind of a simple script. Normally these full edit explainers, I write out a full script. I want to get the messaging exactly right and really put time into this. These number one and two are very low cost. You need probably a graphic designer for number one. Text and context still are incredibly low cost. You need a letterboard or a post-it note, but that's pretty much it. And then full edit explainer video typically takes more time for somebody to put together a longer edit. These are often a couple minutes long. The simple explainer video is like, align yourself to the middle of your camera, and now you've got a vertical edit, a square edit, and then a horizontal edit, right? All ready to go. You can just cut those in Facebook. You can use Facebook's video editor to like cut these down, caption it in Facebook, and that's just you talking to the camera for a minute. Here's the product. Here's why it's great. You think this same format, hook, body, validation, guarantee, offer, CTA. You don't have to go as detailed there, but record yourself for a minute on one thing like that, just talking about it, showing the product, and then, like I said, cut it for each placement, exactly like that. And don't be afraid to just run it as is with no other edits. Simple explainer, just record it and go, and all of that. Very low cost. I would say medium impact most likely, but very low cost, which is crucial. The creative video, this is higher cost, potentially high impact, but higher cost. This is like really thinking about doing something crazy and thinking about whole other clever edits, creative, you know what I'm saying? Just like you're getting outside of the explainer format here and now. Like an example I think of is with my deodorant client, we've tried an ad, and it hasn't worked great, but we've tried an ad where instead of saying this clean deodorant is great, like you would in the explainer format, right? That's what the explainer format is. Here's why this clean deodorant is great, intercut, B-roll, here's all the features and benefits, blah, blah, blah. The creative video is like, we sent the CEO on a hike in 90 degrees, and she asked strangers to smell her armpits. And so the idea there is to illustrate that the product is great by actually getting strangers to smell her armpits on a 90-degree hike, right? On a 9-mile hike at 90 degrees. That's like you're trying to come up with a clever hook and a clever angle to move this point forward. So there's a million. There's endless ideas there. I am bad at these particular things. I'm very much like an essay writer type person. Like I loved writing like argumentative essays in college. Like here's a point, here's 4 points in support of my point, here's my point again. Believe me, that's like the explainer video. The creative is like get somebody who's actually creative, which is probably more you. I don't know. So there you go. Okay, let me pause again. Any questions on those three video formats?
No, I've got ideas for all of them.
Great, I figured you would. Okay, 6 ongoing iterations. This is where you're going to go and look through the past performance of videos that you're already running and start to try to like surgically edit them so that they work better. So if you see that your hook rate is low, then you go and take the same video, but you change the hooks. If you're getting people's attention, you're getting them to stop, 50% of your people are watching the first 3 seconds of your video or whatever, then you move to the body and you change the body, etc. I'm actually not going to belabor this one because I did a whole episode basically about this point with Jess Bachman called Jess Bachman Lights Creative Strategy on Fire. And he explains this better than I do. He's much better at this than I am. But it's another way to think about sort of creative ideas. This is like a little bit further down the road, but you can go listen to that episode. Let me make a note to myself right now to put that in the show notes. Let's see. Part 2, Jess Bachman episode. Okay, great. So that'll go into the show notes. And you can go find that there, and people can go listen to that, and that will give that to you. Okay, 7 and 8, influencers and creators. Everybody knows what these are. They are different. A creator is somebody who's paid to make an ad for you specifically. You don't really care about their influence. You just are asking them to do this. These are actually medium cost, I would say. A lot of times it's like, $500 for 5 ads or whatever. I think I mostly see these not work that well. I'm underwhelmed. There's some people who have gotten really good at this. Think of, if anybody follows Savannah Sanchez, she seems to be awesome at this. Like a stable of creators who do a great job generating UGC style ads. That is definitely a possibility for some people. I tend to see the quality here pretty mixed. I'm not wild about it, but some people seem to really be able to make that work. Influencers are exactly what you think. People who are actual influencers using your product, turning that into video. The kinship guys are really good at using this content, and they just go mass seed your product to a bajillion influencers. This is another higher cost thing, but can pay off in really big ways. So again, everybody knows what those are, so we'll leave that there. Okay, last 2, and I would, if I was you, I would say 6 through 8 are probably not things that I'm necessarily going to push on that hard if I was running Beardbrand right now yet. Number 9, IG organic. This is stuff that you're already posting to Instagram, basically. Now, I know we talked about like you guys don't post a ton of product stuff on Instagram, so this may or may not work, but you can just grab the existing post and put it in the ad account really fast. And that could be something you could do if there's anything at all product focused and just drop it in there. The point here is like just take the work that somebody's already done, drop it in the ad account and see what happens. I've seen some ads, again, do pretty well doing this. And so just sort of don't be afraid to just grab Instagram posts. There are some brands, some people watching this or listening to this who can get a lot of value out of this kind of post. I've got at least one client right now who posts really product focused stuff on their Instagram reel. Their audience loves it, and we just launch all that stuff in the ad account and it works great. So just don't be afraid to do that if you're not already doing it. And then last, customer generated content. This is like actually going to your real customers and asking them for a review of the product with a post-purchase flow. This is a bunch of work on the front end, but is very cheap on the back end. On the front end, you have to get a post-purchase flow where you say to your customers, did you like this product? If so, can you send us a video review of it? We'll give you a $50 gift card as long as we have permission to run it in our ad account. This is going to be low cost, ultimately, low hit rate. So you're going to have not very many of these will work well, but potentially massive impact, and it will build up a giant asset library for you of B-roll that you can use for other stuff. This is like I've seen a brand when I was at Bamboo Earth. We had a customer send in a video that spent hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars. It was just because this you just can't fake authenticity. This customer really loved the product. She did a video talking about how great it was. She sent it in and she said, you can use this. And then we took care of her forever, right? We were just like, here, you get free stuff for as long as you need to because we appreciate this so much. But yeah, it was just like this massive thing. And some customers will be really happy to do that because they love your product and they care about it and they'll go there. So like I said, there's some work on the front end to sort of get this post-purchase flow set up, video submission, all those kinds of things. But this can eventually run in an automated way in the back end, and you can just be getting video all the time and pumping it into your ad account. So from here, that's 10 options. That's too many options. What I would do is pick the 3 to 5 that are the lowest cost with potential impact and start hammering away at those. So okay, any questions, thoughts on those last 2 buckets, anything like that?
No, we definitely have like the customer content. Like I've been able to get just reaching out because we have the Alliance, which is this private forum for our most loyal customers. Like usually I can just drop a
that's a great place to go look.
New message in there, and I'll usually get like 4 to 5 responses. Most recently, I just had some people send in some stuff, just kind of using the product without speaking. So I've been able to have that kind of content just kind of interspersed throughout some of the video ads that we've done, and kind of just using customer testimonials on top of that B-roll of our actual customers using the product.
Great.
I'd love to it's not quite getting the spend I want. So like I get one question I have with the video that I just remembered was, how much do you think it matters to optimize like aspect ratio to placement? And
not that much. I would go make the edits where you can, and like if you're working with a designer or an editor, have them send you a 9x16 and a 4x5 or whatever, or a 9x16 and a 1x1, depending on if it's stills or videos. But like, don't kill yourself on this. Like I said, if you're going to record yourself with video to do this sort of like simple explainer like I was talking about, record it in a way where you can easily cut a 1x1, a 9x16, and a 16x9, because it's just easy. It's not hard, and so you might as well do it. But like ultimately, if I have a 1x1 that is going to be really hard to turn into a 9x16 to put into stories, I don't care. Just run it as a 1x1 in stories, and that's fine. So
yeah,
you're most likely going to make your largest impact on mobile news feeds anyway. So so that's probably what I'd be thinking about most likely.
Yeah, we've been kind of doing everything in 4x5.
Yeah, I think that's
just
fine.
Running it in that format across the board. But I didn't know if that was something that Meta's like, this ad doesn't look good enough, so we're gonna kill your spend.
It's not going to make a bad ad good or a good ad bad. I don't think. If somebody's listening to this or watching this and has definitive evidence in the other direction, that's fine. But I've never seen that be an overwhelming problem.
And then my other question is, like, as in setting up the ad sets, I've been using Advantage Plus placements.
Yep, do it. That's right.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
Cool. I was in the previous method. I was not using Advantage Plus. I was doing manual placements, and we kind of had like a very set, just do these placements. But with this, I figured anything that gives Facebook more to work with is probably better.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Yeah,
Okay.
I think Advantage Plus is probably right. I mean, I turn on all the potential optimizations. I got the multi-advertiser ad thing checked now. Like I'm like, just give me everything that you can give me. So
Let me ask you one more thing, and this might be a stupid question, and this might be my own just kind of like desire for the ad account to look really clean. And so currently everything I have is running to website and shop. Um, let's say there's a hypothetical scenario where we want to run some stuff to a landing page, a private landing page or a hidden landing page, to have like a certain discount offer available that's not available on the shop. And in that case, I'm going to want to set the ad up just to the website. Um, I guess what bothers me about that is that's going to like take away all of my immediate results at the bottom of my account, and that's what bothers me. And if I don't know if it's a thing that should bother me or not. That's my own. Just like I like to see
no,
everything just like neatly presented, but
yeah, I I mean the I think what you have to think about with shops is that you may generate different kinds of purchase behavior on shops than on your website. And so it's good to split out like your AOVs for those two things. This is actually one of the challenges of bid caps now that shops is in there and shops matters, is like you may actually be getting a lower AOV in shops than on your website, in which case you probably have to think about changing your bidding so that you sort of account for that. So you maybe take like a minimum ROAS website only campaign or a bid cap minimum website only campaign alongside your shops. But you can split out all that information in a way that you can see what you want, so you can get like separate AOV. You have to build them as custom columns, but separate AOV, etc., separate anything like that. But it is good to pay attention to with shops, and something we haven't talked about. But you should watch closely what's happening in shops versus website and think about if you need to make any bidding changes from there. I have at least one client where like the difference between their shops and AOV or shops and website AOV is like really really meaningful, and it means you have to think carefully about your bidding.
yeah, my gut says, at least based on like, I feel like I'm still seeing a majority of our sales come through from the website over shops. It's probably 80 to 85% website conversions versus shop conversions.
Yeah, we can check this really fast. I'll show you how you can see this. When you go set up your dashboard, you can do website and meta purchase conversion value right there. And if I had time, I would also set up AOV separately. We could quickly see it by doing this. We'll go apply. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. So yeah, you've got a little bit less than 80% of your purchase behavior happening on your website, but you're getting a meaningful amount on shops. So it's, let's see, 318 out of 318 plus 86. So yeah, oh, you're about right. Yeah, 80% happening on your website. So there you go, 78%. So so yeah, that's how.
Some of this, sometimes I feel like the most helpful thing is all of these different columns that you keep adding into my account that I'm like,
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. Like, I'm so new
Yeah.
to media buying and ad
Yeah,
buying
yeah.
that I'm like, I didn't even know this was a setting that I could look at.
I should probably just create a piece of content that's like, here's my column set for meta ads, because people would probably
That would
be helped
be
by it.
really good, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna jot that down as a. If you're watching this, keep an eye out. Subscribe to my channel. And I'll put that out there soon. So there you go. All right, we're out of time, Mike. Do you have any last super pressing, burning things before we put a button in this and then come back in another month when you've created all this content and tripled the spend?
Yeah, let's. I love the optimism.
All right.
No, I feel good. Got a lot of work to do.
Yep. All right. Let's.
Cool.
Thanks again for taking time to come back around and revisit this, and I'm excited to see what happens from here. Keep me updated. Keep
me
updated.
Thank you. All right.
All right, there it is. My second ever opening the books. I hope that was useful to you. As I said in the intro, there are 2 things for you to do to follow up here. The first is, if you did not listen to or watch, and really you should watch because there's so much screen share happening, my first ever opening the books with Nazrin Jafari from Mixed by Nazrin, Business in a Very Different Phase. Go check that out. The link is in the show notes for that, or you can go to ajfgrowth.com/mixed and you can get that episode and all of the follow-up from that there. Secondly, any of the documentation that I referenced, any of the other episodes I referenced, all the links to all of it are available to you by going to ajfgrowth.com/beardbrand, and you can get everything there totally for free. And I promise you, I'm not going to spam you with email. I don't even have a newsletter. I just figure it's probably a good idea for me to build an email list, I guess. So that's why I'm doing it. I don't even have a great plan for it or anything like that. So you can get all that stuff at ajfgrowth.com/beardbrand. All right, that also leads to the last few follow-ups for every episode, including this one. First of all, a huge thanks to my sponsor, as always, More Staffing. I love More Staffing. You've heard me talk about them so much, including earlier on this show. Virtual assistants can be helpful. Virtual professionals can be life and business changing. That's the reason they can be life changing, because they can be business changing. Go look at hiring overseas in the Philippines with More Staffing. You will love working with them. They're incredible. Go to morenow.co to do that. Of course, I would love if you would share this episode with a friend, if you'd rate, if you'd review. Any of those things would be very helpful to me. As always, if this was useful to you, and I really hope it was, I would love for you to take that little step to say thanks. If that's the way you want to say thanks to me, that would be awesome. Also, if this was useful to you, I would love to hear about why. You can do that by emailing me at podcast@ajfgrowth.com. I always want my content to be better, and so I seriously value the feedback you give me on these sorts of things. Email me, like I said, or reach out to me on Twitter at Andrew J. Ferris. It's just fine as well. Everything I'm doing is always available at ajfgrowth.com. And I think that's everything. Subscribe to my show. Subscribe wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching. There's going to be more of this. We'll do more of it. Oh, yes. If you want to be opening the books, I would love to do it with you. I would like to get 4 of these out a year. They're a lot of work for me, but I'd like to get 4 of them out a year. So if we could make that happen, I need 4 people to do it. So if you want me to give you a coaching call completely for free, the only thing I ask for you is that you're willing to share it with other people. Then we can do that. Email me at podcast@ajfgrowth.com and let me know what your business is like and why you would make a good candidate for this, and let's make it happen. I think it'd be really helpful. I would love to work on your business with you. Thanks so much, as always, and I'll talk to you next time.